Chapter 784. The Shining Black Stone, the Celestial Fruit, and the Cyan Sparrow Blood. These three treasures were all taken away by Chu Fengyan. "Look in front," Han Yueli, who was beside him, suddenly said. Above the cloud feather heavenly palace in front of them, the massive doors were all open. The hundreds of palaces were all open at a glance. Inside each of the palaces, there were countless treasures, royal-grade spiritual stones, and countless spiritual herbs piled up like mountains. In some of the palaces, there were sparkling, fist-sized rocks. Levitation crystals. These fist-sized rocks were levitation crystals. At a glance, they were distributed in each of the palaces. There were a total of 100,000 levitation crystals. Whoever could get all of them would be able to get the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace. "Let's go." Chu Fengyan made a prompt decision. He suddenly moved and drove the Battle Dragon treasure chariot toward the Cloud Feather Palace. The shining black stone, the celestial fruit, and the Cyan Sparrow Blood were very useful to Chu Fengyan. If he could refine them now, they would be enough to increase his strength by leaps and bounds. However, Chu Fengyan did not stop halfway. He drove the Battle Dragon treasure chariot straight into the Cloud Feather Palace. It would take a lot of time to refine these three treasures. Now, the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace was the most important thing. Chu Fengyan's Battle Dragon treasure chariot galloped all the way. The moment he stepped out of the rainbow stairs, his Battle Dragon treasure chariot suddenly disappeared. It did not disappear, but it lost its spiritual power and disappeared directly into Chu Fengyan's empty ring. There seemed to be some kind of restriction in the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace that was suppressing such a spiritual weapon. After all, this was the Cloud Feather Palace. It used to be the core of the Cloud Feather Palace. It was incomparably majestic. Naturally, it would not allow countless warriors to pass through at will. Chu Fengyan scanned the surroundings with his fist. Then, his body moved, and he suddenly rushed toward one of the palaces. His speed was extremely fast. This palace had the largest number of levitation crystals, which was what Chu Fengyan wanted to collect. Chu Fengyan's figure changed continuously. Soon, he arrived at this palace. There seemed to be a special restriction engraved on every treasure in this palace. It was similar to what he saw in Dragon Emperor Yan's cave. It seemed to be set by the experts of the Cloud Feather Palace. However, after 70,000 years, the seal's power had already weakened to the extreme. Even a life and death realm martial artist could break it. Chu Fengyan waved his hand and grabbed at one of the levitation crystals. As he did, all of the restrictive spells on the levitation crystals were shattered. This levitation crystal fell into Chu Fengyan's hand. The Yuhua crystal wasn't actually very valuable. It was slightly useful for refining weapons, but it wasn't very useful for Chu Fengyan's current wealth. However, it was clear that the levitation crystals were no longer limited to this. These levitation crystals were now related to the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace and the treasures of Cloud Feather Palace. Whoever was able to obtain the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace would be able to claim all of the palace's wealth. The wealth of the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace was probably not inferior to that of the 7 great sections. Whoever could obtain it would be extremely wealthy. A levitation crystal like this was more important than the countless treasures present. Collect all of them. Chu Fengyan looked at the countless restrictions in the palace and suddenly roared. The ancient war dragon suddenly appeared behind him. With a dragon roar, Chu Fengyan suddenly punched out. The gust swept across the entire palace, shattering the forbidding auras inside it. Chu Fengyan waved his hand and opened the empty ring. All the treasures in the palace were now collected by Chu Fengyan. Whoever is the first to collect 50,000 Yuhua crystals will be able to obtain the inheritance of our Cloud Feather Palace. Just as Chu Fengyan collected all the Yuhua crystals in the palace, the voice of the old artifact spirit spoke again. Collect 50,000 levitation crystals first. Chu Fengyan looked dignified. He had collected about 2,000 levitation crystals in the palace. There were a total of 100 palaces in the palace. Chu Fengmian had to collect at least half of them to obtain 50,000 levitation crystals. Given the speed of Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli, it was impossible for them to collect as many as the disciples of the 7 great sections. Moreover, many of the warriors present belonged to forces that were subordinate to the 7 great sections. The levitation crystals they collected were very likely to be given to the 7 great sections. Chu Fengmian was at an absolute disadvantage in this competition of manpower. Chu Fengmian had already sensed that the disciples of the 7 great sects had already entered the palace and were constantly collecting the palace's treasures. Almost every palace had an ancient martial art practitioner. Compared to these people, I'm at an absolute disadvantage. Chu Fengmian knew that if they were to compare collecting speed, he would definitely not be able to compete with dozens of people from the 7 great sections. Even if Chu Fengmian could collect a palace in one go and break all the restrictions, it would take him forever to collect half of the palaces. Moreover, by that time, most of the levitation crystals in the palaces would have been collected. It seems that I can only let them collect for me. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a cold smile. Since he could not collect all of the levitation crystals by himself, he would let others do it. Chu Fengmian only needed to snatch all the levitation crystals in the hands of the other warriors. Chu Fengmian immediately made up his mind. Instead of slowly collecting the levitation crystals by himself, he would rather snatch them directly. Let's go. We'll split up and hunt down the other warriors. Chu Fengmian moved his body and suddenly turned into a ray of light, heading toward a palace. Han Yueli, who was beside him, did the same. He turned into a ray of light and headed in another direction. With Han Yueli's current strength, he could defeat most of the warriors if he encountered them. Even if he encountered Lord Huang and the others, Chu Fengmian would be able to arrive in time. The Palace of Cloud's Feather is really full of treasures. The treasures in this palace are more than what I've seen in my life. In one of the palaces, 2 disciples of the desolate ancient sect were collecting the treasures. Both of them used their spiritual energy to break the countless restrictions in the palace. The treasures and levitation crystals fell into their hands one after another. It's a pity that we have to hand these levitation crystals to senior brother. Otherwise, we might be able to obtain the inheritance of the Palace of Cloud's Feather. One of the disciples looked at the levitation crystals in front of him and could not help but sigh. Chapter 785. Everyone wanted the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace. All the martialists present had the heart of a powerhouse. If they hadn't wanted to obtain the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace, they wouldn't have stayed in Sky Feather Divine territory for so long. Don't be silly. We have to get 50,000 Yuhua crystals to get the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace. Do you think we can get 50,000? One of the desolate ancient sect disciples said disdainfully. Why don't we give them to senior brother in exchange for some benefits? That's true. Let's collect more Yuhua crystals and give them to senior brother in exchange for some benefits. When we get out, we can think of a way to break through the life and death realm. Once we reach the life-shattering realm, we'll be a real antique and have a high status in the sect. Another disciple said. As the 2 of them talked, they kept collecting the countless treasures in the palace, including the Yuhua crystals. At this moment, a figure suddenly rushed into the palace. Who's there? The 2 desolate ancient sect disciples' faces changed and were filled with murderous intent. In Skyfeather Divine Domain, it was common to kill and barter for countless treasures. When the 2 of them saw the figure that had entered the palace, their faces changed drastically. The figure was Chu Fengmian, who had just fought against 4 of them and severely injured Gubai. Run! The 2 sect of the Barren Ancient Sect disciples immediately tried to escape. Chu Fengmian's strength had been fully displayed. The 2 of them didn't dare to fight against Chu Fengmian and tried to escape without hesitation. How dare you run away in front of me? Chu Fengmian sneered. With a wave of his hand, the 2 desolate ancient sect disciples were killed by a surge of spiritual energy. Chu Fengmian collected the blood mist around them. Chu Fengmian walked over and picked up the empty rings of the 2 desolate ancient sect disciples. There were more than 1,000 Yuhua crystals in their empty rings, and many other treasures. Chu Fengmian put all of them into his empty ring. It seems like Saint Huang is determined to get the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace. He's already spent a lot of money to buy Yuhua crystals. Chu Fengmian had also heard some of the conversation between the two, so he naturally knew about this matter. Sage Huang was determined to obtain the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace. Otherwise, he wouldn't have paid such a high price to purchase the Yuhua crystal. This was because once the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace was obtained by someone else, the Yuhua crystals in his possession would be meaningless. At that time, no matter how great the price he paid, it would all be for naught. This gave Chu Fengmian a sense of urgency. If the Huang sage spent a lot of effort to purchase the Yuhua crystals, not only the people from the 7 major sects, even the warriors from other powers might know that they had no hope of obtaining the inheritance and sell the Yuhua crystals to the Huang sage. Regardless of whether it was some treasures or a favor from the desolate sage, it was a profitable trade. In fact, only 10% of the warriors in Cloud Feather Palace were disciples of the 7 major sections. The remaining 90% belonged to other forces. Many of these warriors knew their limits and knew that the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace was not something they could compete for. These people could sell the Yuhua crystals to the Desolate Sage, which was equivalent to helping the Desolate Sage collect the Yuhua crystals. He had to quicken his pace. Chu Fengmian moved his body and used the phantom body technique again, running towards the next palace. In half an hour, Chu Fengmian went to 4 or 5 palaces and obtained all the Yuhua crystals in the hands of the warriors. When he encountered the disciples of the 7 major sects, Chu Fengmian killed them without hesitation. As for the warriors who weren't disciples of the 7 major sects, Chu Fengmian took the initiative to ask them to hand over the Yuhua crystals. If they handed it over, Chu Fengmian wouldn't kill them. After all, Chu Fengmian didn't have any grudges with the other sections. He wasn't someone who would kill the innocent. As long as they handed over the Yuhua crystals, Chu Fengmian wouldn't take any of the treasures they obtained. However, if those warriors didn't know what was good for them, Chu Fengmian wouldn't show any mercy and could only kill them. Chu Fengmian wouldn't give them the chance to sell the Yuhua generals to the Desolate Sage. Not killing them will be helping Chu Fengmian's enemies. Chu Fengmian wasn't interested in that. Within 2 hours, Chu Fengmian had already searched all the palaces in the surrounding area. The palaces were huge. In the Cloud Feather Palace, Chu Fengmian couldn't use his escape light or the Battle Dragon treasure carriage. He could only use his movement techniques, which slowed down his speed significantly. It took him 2 hours to search through the surrounding palaces. He had obtained more than 10,000 Yuhua crystals. Other than that, there were countless treasures that Chu Fengmian's empty ring couldn't hold. He bumped into a few empty rings. It could be said that even if he left now, the treasures in the Cloud Feather Palace wouldn't be inferior to the treasures in the ancient Yin Dragon Emperor cave abode. However, how could Chu Fengmian leave just like that? His goal was the legacy of the Cloud Feather Palace. Chu Fengmian wouldn't leave until he obtained the legacy of the Cloud Feather Palace. Continue. Chu Fengmian stopped for a while before he moved again and headed to a further area. On the other side, the disciples of the 7 major sects seemed to have followed the lead of the sage Huang and handed over all the Yuhua crystals they had obtained. In front of a palace, Sage Huang sat on the ground and seemed to be cultivating some kind of cultivation technique. Senior brother, a disciple of the barren ancient sect, hurried over and handed over an empty ring. The empty ring was filled with Yuhua crystals. These are from the Black Heaven sect. They are here to present to senior brother. All right, tell the Black Heaven sect that they will be rewarded handsomely after this is done. Sage Huang slowly stood up from the ground and opened his mouth. Also, promise more benefits. Get everyone to hand over their Yuhua crystals to me. I must obtain the legacy of the Cloud Feather Palace. Yes, senior brother. I have one more thing to report. The disciple of the barren ancient sect said with a gloomy face. Speak. Sage Huang shouted coldly. The disciple of the barren ancient sect was shocked and quickly knelt on the ground. In the Cloud Feather Palace, Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli were hunting down the disciples of the 7 major sections. Those who weren't from the 7 major sects were killed by them, and all the Yuhua crystals were taken away. Oh, as expected, this kid is here for the legacy of the Cloud Feather Palace. When Sage Huang heard this, there wasn't any surprise on his face. He was as calm as ever. He had already guessed all of this. Pass down my orders. Speed up. Don't deal with this kid first. When I obtain the legacy of the Cloud Feather Palace, I will have a way to kill this kid. Chapter 786. Yes. The barren ancient sect disciple stood up slowly and replied respectfully before turning to leave. A brat from the North region. Let's see how you can compete with me. In 2 hours, I have already obtained 12,000 levitation crystals. No matter how fast you hunt, you can't beat me. As Lord Huang spoke, a white mist gradually appeared on his body. His entire body was shrouded in the white mist, and the aura on his body was rising rapidly. Suddenly, Lord Huang's aura was completely different from before. There was an extremely ancient feeling to it. Great attainment of the barren ancient great path. Chu Fengyan, the next time I see you, it will be your death. Lord Huang snorted coldly, and with a move, he left his original spot. Within the Cloud Feather Palace, Chu Fengyan's figure was constantly moving through the palace. For a total of 6 hours, Chu Fengyan did not rest at all. He was crazily hunting other warriors. Now, there were 30,000 levitation crystals in his empty ring. As time passed, the levitation crystals in each palace had been taken away by others. Many of them had been obtained by others. Therefore, the number of levitation crystals that Chu Fengyan obtained from hunting warriors was decreasing. Now, many warriors that he encountered no longer had any levitation crystals. They were either snatched away or sold to Lord Huang and the others. This was not good news for Chu Fengyan. He had to obtain 50,000 levitation crystals in order to obtain the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace. The number of levitation crystals in his hands was still too little. It was far from enough. Just as Chu Fengyan was thinking, a figure suddenly entered a palace in front of him. Yao Hai. Chu Fengyan looked over and could tell that this person was Yao Hai. However, due to the distance, Yao Hai did not seem to see Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan's 5 senses were far superior to other warriors. His battle dragon bloodline was enough to transform his entire body. Therefore, he could tell that this person was Yao Hai from the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Good. Looks like this medicine is sent me a big gift. Chu Fengyan's eyes flashed. With Yao Hai's strength, there were not many warriors in Cloud Feather Palace who could be his opponent. Yao Hai must have a lot of levitation crystals in his hands. Previously, when they were outside, Chu Fengyan wanted to kill Yao Hai, but at that time, Yao Hai quietly hid, so Chu Fengyan didn't notice. Now that they had bumped into each other, they could kill Yao Hai while they were at it. Damn it, this palace has been swept clean as well. Yao Hai entered the palace, but what he found was an empty palace. The levitation crystals and the other treasures in the palace had all been taken away by others. That despicable Chu Fengyan. If this person had killed the disciples of our Valley of the Medicine Masters, how could I have fallen to such a state of being all alone and even have to work for Saint Huang? Yao Hai's eyes were filled with resentment. His disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters had all died at the hands of Chu Fengyan. All the disciples had been killed by Chu Fengyan, leaving him alone. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been unable to compete for the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace. But now, he could only work for Saint Huang. Damn that brat. Wait until I leave this returning ruined sky. I'll definitely kill him. I'll grind his bones to dust. Yao Hai's eyes were filled with murderous intent. It was indeed difficult to deal with Chu Fengyan in the returning ruined sky. But in the 9 domains, a mere Chu Fengyan was like an ant to the 7 major sections. It was time for Chu Fengyan to die. Only by killing Chu Fengyan could the anger in his heart be appeased. He had already thought of a plan. Once he left the returning ruined sky, he would inform the Valley of Medicine Masters of Chu Fengyan's whereabouts. When the Valley of the Medicine Masters came after him, Chu Fengyan would definitely die. Is that so? You want to kill me and grind my bones to dust? Unfortunately, you won't have the chance to do so. A voice suddenly sounded from outside the palace. Chu Fengmian's figure walked in alone from outside the palace. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with murderous intent. It seemed that he had to kill all the disciples of the 7 major sects in the returning ruined sky. Otherwise, once they left the returning ruined sky and spread the news, the people of the 7 major sects would definitely hunt Chu Fengmian down. None of these people could be left alive. Chu Fengmian? Yao Hai was shocked when he saw Chu Fengmian appear. He hurriedly retreated with fear and shock. He also didn't expect to meet Chu Fengmian here. Yao Hai, didn't you want to kill me? Why? I'm standing right here. Let's see how you're going to kill me. Chu Fengmian looked at Yao Hai with a mocking smile. Chu Fengmian, what are you trying to do? Do you really intend to make an enemy out of the Valley of the Medicine Masters? Yao Hai calmed down and stared at Chu Fengmian as he spoke word by word. I know that the person you want to deal with is Saint Lord Huang. You might not know this, but Saint Lord Huang has already reached the Life Shatterer realm. He's your true opponent. No matter how strong you are, there's still a gap between you and the Life Shatterer realm. Therefore, you must obtain the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace. Only by obtaining the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace will you have the ability to fight against the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace. Otherwise, if Saint Lord Huang obtains everything, it will be your death. Therefore, you must join forces with me now. Yao Hai looked at Chu Fengmian and repeatedly opened his mouth to speak. His glib tongue instantly drew Saint Lord Huang into the opposing camp. He wanted Chu Fengmian to realize that Saint Lord Huang was his true enemy. Join forces? Do you think I need to join forces with you? After hearing Yao Hai's words, Chu Fengmian's expression didn't change. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a mocking smile. Life Shatterer realm? Do you think I don't know that Saint Lord Huang has already reached the Life Shatterer realm? Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. When he met Saint Lord Huang previously, Chu Fengmian could sense that Saint Lord Huang's realm had already reached the Life Shatterer realm. Chu Fengmian already had such a guess when Han Yueli was being chased. At that time, Sword Ancestor Huang and War God Lu were both chasing after Han Yueli. The two of them wanted to obtain Han Yueli's innate origin to break through to the Life Shatterer realm. Only Saint Lord Huang didn't chase after them. At that time, Chu Fengmian felt that Saint Lord Huang was either already in the Life Shatterer realm or was about to. Therefore, he didn't chase after Han Yueli. Now that he saw it, it was indeed so. Saint Lord Huang had already stepped into the Life Shatterer realm. Chapter 787. Chu Fengmian was aware of this. When they were fighting outside, Chu Fengmian did not go for the kill. It was not easy to defeat a Life Shatterer martial artist. Moreover, that person was Lord Huang, a super genius of the Desolate Ancient Sect. Even if Chu Fengmian fought Lord Huang, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. It was possible that the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace would be picked up by Yao Hai and the others. Neither Chu Fengmian nor Lord Huang wanted to see such an outcome. Hence, they did not use their full strength. However, the battle between Chu Fengmian and Lord Huang was inevitable. Whoever won this battle would be able to look down on everyone in End Ruined Sky, and no one would be able to stop them. Yao Hai, do you really think that I can't tell that you're just stalling for time? Chu Fengmian looked at Yao Hai and sneered. What? What did you say? Yao Hai's face froze when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. Stop pretending. You've already sent a jade talisman to Lord Huang for help. You're just stalling for time. Do you really think that I can't tell? Chu Fengmian looked at Yao Hai and did not want to continue talking nonsense with him. Die. Chu Fengmian moved his palm and a sword flashed. A sword light shrouded Yao Hai's body. Layers of sword light seemed to want to completely destroy everything in the world. Damn it. Yao Hai's face turned gloomy when he saw that Chu Fengmian had seen through his plan. He had planned to stall for time and wait for Lord Huang to arrive. When Lord Huang and Chu Fengmian were both injured, he would reap the benefits and take the opportunity to snatch the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace. However, all of his schemes had been seen through by Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian would not give him the chance to wait for Lord Huang to arrive. He immediately attacked with a supreme killing move. The sword light shrouded Yao Hai, and in the next moment, Yao Hai was about to be killed by the sword light. Medicine King's Pagoda. A 7-story pagoda suddenly appeared in Yao Hai's palm. He opened the door of the pagoda and entered it. Countless sword lights hit the Medicine King's Pagoda, creating layers of sparks. However, they cannot break it. Do you think this little heaven-grade spirit artifact can protect you? How laughable! An ant like you dares to scheme against me? Unforgivable. Break from me. Seeing Yao Hai hiding in the Medicine King Pagoda, Chu Fengyan sneered. The Medicine King's Pagoda could only be considered an ordinary heaven-grade spiritual weapon. It was on par with Yi Tianjuan's innate Jade Rui. Back then, Chu Fengyan had shattered this innate Jade Rui before he had even survived the tribulation of life and death. Not to mention the current Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan sneered again and again. Waves of terrifying spiritual energy burst out from his body. His sword intent was fully displayed, making Chu Fengyan look incomparably sharp. When ordinary martial artists encountered Chu Fengyan now, just his aura alone was enough to make them unable to resist. One sword shattering heaven and earth. Destroy. Chu Fengyan coldly snorted. The sword in his hand was shrouded by countless sword wills, which turned into an incomparably sharp sword. This sword fell from the sky. Boom! The sword heavily smashed onto the Medicine King's Pagoda. The Medicine King's Pagoda shook and suddenly shattered into countless fragments. The Medicine King's Pagoda, a heaven-grade spiritual weapon, was directly shattered by Chu Fengyan's sword. What kind of sword is this? What kind of power is this? Even a heaven-grade spiritual weapon was shattered by a sword? How is this possible? Yao Hai's face was shocked to the extreme. He knew that the Medicine King's Pagoda wouldn't be able to protect him forever. After all, for a martial artist at Chu Fengyan's level, a heaven-grade spiritual weapon wasn't much. However, in Yao Hai's heart, he could at least use the Medicine King's Pagoda to stall for some time. As long as he could stall until Huang Sage dared to come, it would be fine. He never imagined that Chu Fengyan would be able to shatter the Medicine King's Pagoda with a single sword. Chu Fengyan's strength had already surpassed Yao Hai's understanding. Was such strength really a life and death martial artist? Right now, Yao Hai had a feeling that even if Huang Sage really came, he might not be Chu Fengyan's opponent. Chu Fengyan, you really want to kill me? My father is a supreme elder of Medicine King's Valley. A strand of my life lamp is in the Medicine King Valley. If you kill me, my father will definitely know. Seeing Chu Fengyan's sword coming, Yao Hai hastily said, As long as you let me go today, I'm willing to give you all my levitation crystals. Moreover, I can join hands with you to deal with Huang Sage. You talk too much. Who cares who your father is? Supreme Elder of Medicine King's Valley? Sooner or later, I'll flatten Medicine King's Valley. When the time comes, I'll send him to accompany you. Chu Fengyan coldly snorted. He had seen this kind of threat many times. It was just a feeble struggle. Chu Fengyan's sword flickered, and countless sword lights attacked Yao Hai's body. His body was immediately pierced by countless sword qis, and after a series of turbulent waves, it shattered into pieces. Yao Hai's body turned into a cloud of blood mist, which was absorbed by Chu Fengyan. After absorbing Yao Hai's blood mist, Chu Fengyan felt that the spiritual power in his body had reached its peak again. In the heavenly feather divine domain, Chu Fengyan had already killed dozens of people, and their blood essence had been devoured by Chu Fengyan. Now, the power of the blood essence had all erupted. Within Chu Fengyan's body, the ancient war dragon's blood essence was condensed. 40,000 drops. Now, Chu Fengyan's body had condensed 40,000 drops of ancient war dragon's blood essence. The spiritual power in his body seemed to have condensed to the extreme and suddenly expanded out. Suddenly, there was a huge spiritual power fluctuation. The spiritual power left Chu Fengyan's body and turned into the shape of ancient war dragons. They circled around Chu Fengyan and roared. Dragon roars sounded, as if they were celebrating Chu Fengyan. 6th level of life and death realm. I've finally reached it. Chu Fengyan felt the power in his body, and the corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile. Another breakthrough. Now, Chu Fumian's confidence was multiplied. The inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace would belong to him, and no one could take it away from him. Thinking of this, Chu Fumian opened Yao Hai's spatial ring, and there were countless levitation crystals in it. After counting, there were more than 10,000 levitation crystals. Yao Hai had accumulated so many levitation crystals, and it was obvious that he had not completely given up. He wanted to obtain the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace, so he had secretly accumulated them. Fortunately, Yao Hai did not give these levitation crystals to Saint Huang. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. At this time, whoever obtained 10,000 levitation crystals would be enough to determine the winner. Chapter 788. Great! With these 10,000 Yuhua crystals, I have a total of 40,000 Yuhua crystals in my hands. Soon I will have 50,000. Chu Fumian was overjoyed. The levitation crystals that Yao Hai had secretly collected had all fallen into Chu Fumian's hands. It was like sending charcoal in snowy weather. As long as he could obtain another 10,000 crystals, the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace would fall into his hands. Yue should have collected some Yuhua crystals as well. Chu Fumian's mind flickered as he sent out a voice transmission Jade Talisman. Han Yueli's hunting speed might not be as fast as Chu Fumian's, but he must have accumulated some. Now, Chu Fumian only needed 10,000 Yuhua crystals to obtain the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace. Now, the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace was right in front of Chu Fumian. He could obtain it at any time. After a while, the voice transmission Jade Talisman returned. Chu Fumian finally let out a sigh of relief. In Han Yueli's hands, there were still more than 10,000 Yuanhua crystals. This also meant that no matter what, Lord Huang would not dare to open the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace before him. Chu Fumian had 50,000 Yuhua crystals. Let's go. Chu Fumian moved his body and rushed towards a direction. Less than a minute after Chu Fumian left, a few figures rushed over. The one leading them was Lord Huang. Looking at the empty palace and the surging spiritual energy in the surroundings, Lord Huang's face turned gloomy. Senior, what's wrong? A sect of the desolate ancient sect, disciple beside Huang, Shengjun asked quietly. He also noticed a change in Lord Huang's face. Damn it, that brat Chu Fumian killed Yao Hai. Lord Huang's face turned gloomy. His eyes were filled with worry. Naturally, he was not worried about Yao Hai's death. Yao Hai's death had nothing to do with him. However, Yao Hai had not given him any Yuhua crystals. This was the reason why his face turned gloomy. Now, he had accumulated about 40,000 levitation crystals. He was only a little bit away from obtaining the levitation crystals from the Medicine Sea. Then, he would be able to obtain 50,000 levitation crystals and obtain the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace. But now, Yao Hai had been killed by Chu Fumian. Needless to say, the levitation crystals in Yao Hai's hands must have also fallen into Chu Fumian's hands. Tell all the disciples to collect Yuhua crystals at all costs. Sage Huang's face changed drastically as he roared in anger. This anger caused the surrounding disciples of the desolate ancient sect to kneel down one after another. Saint Lord Huang's current realm had already surpassed life and death, reaching life-shattering realm. His aura was completely different from before. His wrath wasn't something a life and death expert could withstand. Yes, all the disciples of the barren ancient sect replied respectfully. They hurriedly split up and continued their search for the levitation crystals. Right now, Lord Huang could only hope that Yao Hai did not have too many Yuanhua crystals. Chu Fumian's figure sprinted all the way until he arrived at one of the palaces before gradually coming to a stop. Not long after, Han Yueli's figure also arrived on time and handed over an empty ring. Opening it, Chu Fumian saw that there were 10,000 levitation crystals inside as well. Good, this is a great harvest. After obtaining another 50,000 levitation crystals, Chu Fumian's heart finally calmed down. In order to collect the levitation crystals, Sage Lord Huang had paid a huge price. He had spent a lot of money. A single levitation crystal from Sage Lord Huang could bring about countless benefits. Therefore, almost all the martial artists present, even if they only had 1 or 2 levitation crystals, had given all of them to Saint Lord Huang. Fortunately, Chu Fumian had killed Yao Hai and seized all the levitation crystals in his hands. This gave him a head start. However, Chu Fumian still couldn't completely relax. He had roughly calculated that he had around 50,000 levitation crystals. If he was only a few levitation crystals away, and Saint Lord Huang took the lead, he would really want to cry, but no tears would come out. Chu Fumian opened the empty ring. His gaze was solemn as he counted the levitation crystals one by one. With his current spiritual consciousness, 1 minute was enough for him to scan through the levitation crystals. However, Chu Fumian spent a total of 5 minutes to accurately count the number. 50,003 levitation crystals. When the final number was read out, Chu Fumian finally let out a sigh of relief. Right now, he had exactly 50,003 levitation crystals in his hands. Compared to the 50,000 levitation crystals, there were only 3 more crystals. However, these 3 crystals were already enough. If Saint Lord Huang were to obtain all the levitation crystals in the Cloud Feather Palace, he would only have 49,997 levitation crystals at most. The inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace belonged to Chu Fumian. This time, it's all thanks to you. Chu Fumian looked at Han Yueli beside him and hugged her. This time, if Chu Fumian was alone, he wouldn't be able to compete with Saint Lord Huang no matter what. Fortunately, he had Han Yueli's help. Only then could Chu Fumian suppress him. You should call the elder over first. A long night is fraught with problems. Han Yueli's face turned red as she hurriedly retreated. Chu Fumian said, "All right." Chu Fumian also nodded as he calmed himself down. Suddenly, his mind moved. He arranged the 50,000 levitation crystals in front of him and called out softly. The elder was the spirit of the Cloud Feather Palace. Now that Chu Fumian was in the Cloud Feather Palace, his every move would be watched by the elder spirit. With this call, the old artifact spirit's body suddenly materialized in front of him. 50,000 levitation crystals in just 8 hours. Little guy, it seems like you're quite fast. Not bad. You're decisive in killing. Only such a character can become an expert of a generation. The elder spirit looked at Chu Fumian and said with a smile. Naturally, he saw Chu Fumian's every move in the Cloud Feather Palace. If Chu Fumian didn't kill the disciples of the 7 major sects, Saint Lord Huang would have collected most of the levitation crystals. However, not killing the disciples of the 7 major sects wasn't kindness. It was stupidity. At this time, not killing them would be going against Chu Fumian. In the world of martial artists, martial arts were respected. Without power, everything was nothing. He had to get the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace. If he was kind and let Saint Lord Huang get the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace, it would be the end of Chu Fumian. In this matter, Chu Fumian didn't do anything wrong. From the Elder Spirit's words, he didn't think that Chu Fumian did anything wrong. Chapter 789. Actually, the person this old man thought the most highly of was you, little fellow. The old artifact spirit looked at Chu Fumian and smiled. Very good. You didn't let me down. Come with me. The artifact spirit said slowly. The surrounding space suddenly shattered, turning into an incomparably huge tunnel. Chu Fumian couldn't see what was at the end of the tunnel. What a terrifying power! When the old artifact spirit attacked, Chu Fumian couldn't see how strong the old artifact spirit was. Compared to life-saving experts, they were much, much stronger, especially since the old artifact spirit was only an artifact spirit and not a martial artist. In his impression, an artifact spirit was enough to support a spirit artifact. Chu Fumian had never imagined that an artifact spirit could be so powerful. This is nothing. This old man is nothing before a truly powerful artifact spirit. Xing Xian's disdainful voice sounded in his mind as if he had heard Chu Fumian's words. If I can recover my full strength, I can squash this old man to death with a single finger. Xing Xian's words were arrogant, But Chu Fengmian could hear the extreme confidence in his tone. It was as if he didn't take the old artifact seriously from the bottom of his heart. Squash this old artifact spirit to death with a single finger. Chu Fengmian didn't believe Xing Xian's words. Chu Fengmian didn't know how strong the old artifact spirit was, but he was definitely stronger than most of the old antiques that had transcended life and death. Even with Chu Fengmian's current spiritual sense, he couldn't see through the old artifact spirit's true strength. However, in Xing Xian's opinion, the old man was still extremely weak. He didn't even take him seriously. What? You don't believe me? Humph! If I can recover my full strength, this little 9 regions will be nothing. Xing Xian said coldly. Since you're so strong, how did you end up in your current state? Chu Fengmian couldn't help but ask after hearing Xing Xian's words. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Xing Xian seemed to have lost his temper. After a moment of silence, he spoke again. What I've experienced is unimaginable to you. When you truly stand at the peak of the 9 regions, perhaps you'll truly be qualified to know what happened back then. After saying that, Xing Xian no longer spoke, no matter how Chu Fengmian asked. There is another universe beyond the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian could roughly guess that Xianxing's origin was definitely not within the 9 domains, but outside the 9 domains, in the endless starry sky outside the 9 domains. There were other martial artists and other forces in the outer realms. All of this was just a rumor from the ancient era. No one had proven it yet. However, the battle dragon art that Xing Xian had taught Chu Fengmian was definitely not a technique from the 9 realms. No sect or expert in the 9 realms could create such a monstrous technique. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, he hadn't even completed the first level. It was enough to see how monstrous the battle dragon art was. There is only one possibility for this cultivation technique to have originated from outside the 9 regions. Furthermore, the name Darkstar Sword had never been seen before in the history of the 9 regions. Battle Dragon Art, Darkstar Sword. I wonder what kind of person could have created such an existence. Chu Fengmian sighed softly. At the same time, he grabbed Hanyue Li's hand and stepped into the tunnel together. The moment the artifact spirit stepped into the tunnel, a voice reverberated throughout the entire Cloud Feather Palace. The inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace has been opened. The Cloud Feather Palace is about to close. Everyone, leave as soon as possible. Those who don't leave will die. The majestic voice instantly reverberated throughout the entire Cloud Feather Palace. The inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace has been opened. Who is it? How did he get 50,000 levitation crystals so quickly? Is it Chu Fengmian or Lord Huang? I don't know, but the Cloud Feather Palace is about to close. Let's leave quickly. Otherwise, we will be doomed if we are trapped inside. Some of the martial artists heard the voice and lifted their heads to discuss. However, some of them had already noticed it. The Cloud Feather Palace had begun to close. If they didn't leave, they would be completely trapped inside. In front of the palace, Sage Huang stood where he was. In front of him, countless levitation crystals were placed densely together, like a mountain. 49,997 crystals. When he finished counting the last Yuhua crystal, Lord Huang's face turned extremely gloomy. At this moment, the artifact spirit elder's voice suddenly reverberated from the sky. Bam! Lord Huang gritted his teeth and slapped the levitation crystals in front of him, turning them into dust. Damn it! Damn it! Damn Chu Fengmian! I will definitely kill you! St. Lord Huang roared out in a frenzy. Gritting his teeth, his eyes were filled with an endless amount of rage and fury. Senior brother, let's leave quickly. The gates of the Cloud Feather Palace have already closed. A disciple of the desolate ancient sect hurried over. He couldn't care less about Lord Huang's rage and hurriedly said, Chu Fengmian, I will definitely kill you. Lord Huang's eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. He looked at the Cloud Feather Palace unwillingly. With a move, he left the Cloud Feather Palace. The martial artists present left the Cloud Feather Palace one after another. Finally, after 5 minutes, the gates of the Cloud Feather Palace closed abruptly. No more martial artists were able to enter. On the other side, Chu Fengmian and Hanueli stepped into the space tunnel. Behind the tunnel was an extremely huge palace. This huge palace was located at the peak of the 9 heavens. It was much higher than the 100 palaces from before. Above the gates of the palace, there were 4 big words: Cloud Feather Palace. The words seemed to have been carved by a peerless expert in the past. Even after countless years, the words were still as clear as ever. Even the strokes of the words could be seen at a glance. Chu Fengmian then noticed that the plaque with the words carved on it was made of supreme-grade heavenly Xian crystals. Supreme-grade heavenly Xian crystals were known to be the toughest material in the world. Even the strongest martial artists wouldn't be able to move it. However, these 4 big words were carved on it. The strength of the person who carved these 4 words was definitely far beyond Chu Fengmian's imagination. This is the forbidden ground of the Cloud Feather Palace. Cloud Feather Palace. The weapon spirit elder looked at the Cloud Feather Palace and said with a hint of nostalgia in his eyes, "No one has set foot here for 70,000 years. Not bad. This is a good seedling for the Cloud Feather Palace. The 2 of you come in." Chapter 790. As the elders spoke, the gate of Cloud Feather Palace suddenly opened. The ancient bronze gate had not been opened for 70,000 years. When it opened, 5 skeletons were sitting inside. Although these 5 skeletons did not have any flesh or blood on them, they appeared to have a divine aura. It was as if they were more alive than living people. Even after 70,000 years, the 5 skeletons were still sitting in Cloud Feather Palace. What kind of strength did these 5 skeletons possess when they were alive? Why are they still standing after tens of thousands of years? Chu Fengmian exclaimed. After a powerful martial artist died, only a skeleton was left. It might be able to last for 100 years, but after 1,000 or 10,000 years, it would be eroded and turned into a pile of dust. However, these 5 skeletons had been immortal for a total of 70,000 years. Looking at them now, there was no change at all. Chu Fengmian even felt that the 5 skeletons were not dead yet. They were like living people who could come back to life at any time. "These are the 5 supreme elders of Cloud Feather Palace," the elders said calmly. "They are the supreme elders of Cloud Feather Palace," the elders said calmly. "Greetings, elders." Chu Fengmian and Hanueli bowed and greeted them in a low voice. The 5 supreme elders were definitely the top figures in the 9 regions. Even if they were dead and turned into skeletons, they were still worthy of Chu Fengmian's respect. Cloud Feather Palace will only open again after 70,000 years. I didn't expect to meet you in the first opening. It's a blessing for Cloud Feather Palace. The elder looked at Chu Fengmian and couldn't help but sigh. "Young man, are you willing to join Cloud Feather Palace and become the Heavenly Emperor of Cloud Feather Palace?" Heavenly Emperor? Chu Fengmian couldn't help but exclaim when he heard the title. The sect masters of Cloud Feather Palace were called Heavenly Emperors? Yes, the sect masters of Cloud Feather Palace are all Heavenly Emperors. Any one of them is strong enough to dominate the 9 regions and command everyone. Why not be called Heavenly Emperors? The elders said proudly. Cloud Feather Palace was an invincible existence 70,000 years ago. No one dared to disobey it. Of course, if not for the fact that you don't dare to accept this title, you can also leave as you wish right now. My Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace has never produced a single useless celestial emperor, dominating the 9 regions and commanding the 4 regions. Not bad. I'll be the celestial emperor. Chu Fengmian laughed heartily at the old artifact spirit's words. He wanted to flatten the 7 great sects and stand at the peak of the 9 regions. The title of Celestial Emperor was indeed suitable for him. What reason did he have to refuse? All right. Hearing Chu Fengmian's straightforward answer, the old spirit showed some joy in his eyes. Only with such confidence and arrogance from the bottom of his heart could he become a true expert of his generation. If he didn't even have the heart to dominate the 9 realms, how could he still be called a king? The old spirit saw the heart of an expert in Chu Fengmian. Only with such a strong heart would one have a chance to reach the peak of the 9 realms and become the emperor of the 9 realms. From today onwards, the master of Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace belongs to you. All the wealth in it will be yours to use. However, there's one thing: you must not disgrace the name of Celestial Emperor. Otherwise, even if others don't kill you, I will." The old spirit suddenly pointed at Chu Fengyan's forehead. Two wing-like marks suddenly appeared on Chu Fengyan's forehead and gradually disappeared. All of a sudden, countless memories flooded into Chu Fengyan's mind. In these memories, Chu Fengyan had seen everything that had happened in Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace 70,000 years ago. In addition to these memories, there was also a technique that came into Chu Fengyan's mind along with the memories. Cloud Feather Heavenly Sword. This was a sword technique. It was once the most powerful sword technique in Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace. The old spirit could tell that Chu Fengyan's cultivation method was mainly sword-based. Therefore, he gave the most powerful sword technique in Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace to Chu Fengyan. The Cloud Feather Heavenly Sword was a sword technique that focused on speed. The speed of the sword was faster than the wind. It could even destroy people and create a storm. Although it was an unconventional sword technique, the Cloud Feather Heavenly Sword was definitely one of the most powerful sword techniques Chu Fengyan had ever seen. Amazing! Chu Fengyan couldn't help but sigh. The person who created this sword technique was definitely an ancestor of the sword Dao who could reach the peak of the sword Dao. If he didn't take such an unconventional path, it was very likely that he would have comprehended the essence of swordsmanship and become a sword emperor. Cloud Feather Heavenly Sword. Merge with my body, Chu Fengyan shouted. There were many things worth learning from the Cloud Feather Heavenly Sword. All the mysteries in it were integrated into Chu Fengyan's 9-region swordsmanship. What he wanted to create was an unprecedented sword technique. He wanted to integrate all the sword techniques in the world into it and create a perfect sword technique. Great! After integrating the Cloud Feather Heavenly Sword, my 9-region swordsmanship will be countless times faster than before. Chu Fengyan had already felt the transformation of his 9-region swordsmanship. Such a sword technique would bring endless benefits to Chu Fengyan. However, a single strand was still too little. Elder Yun, I wonder if there are any other sword techniques in the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace that I could take a look at? Chu Fengyan asked the Elder Spirit. Since the Elder Spirit was the spirit of the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace, Chu Fengyan called him Elder Yun. Why? The path of swordsmanship has always been specialized. It's useless to learn more. Elder Yun frowned when he heard Chu Fengyan's words. The Cloud Feather Heavenly Sword is already the best sword technique in the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace. It won't be easy for you to comprehend it. Elder Yun was implying that Chu Fengyan shouldn't bite off more than he could chew. Chu Fengyan's expression didn't change when he heard Elder Yun's words. Of course, Chu Fengyan knew that Elder Yun's reminder was for his own good. However, if Chu Fengyan wanted to create his own sword technique, he would have to gather the strengths of hundreds of sword techniques. For him, the more sword techniques there were, the better. Elder Yun, watch out for my sword. All of a sudden, Chu Fengyan let out a soft cry. The ancestral dragon Paragon sword flew out from his hand and pierced towards old Yun. The speed of the sword was so fast that even the sword light couldn't be seen. The tip of the sword was already closing in on Elder Yun. This is... Old Yun's gaze faintly revealed some astonishment. Suddenly, he pointed his finger at the center of the tip of the sword. Only then did the sword stop. Self-created sword technique? You've already created your own sword technique? Elder Yun could tell that Chu Fengyan's sword technique didn't belong to any sword technique in the world. He had opened up another path and created an unprecedented sword technique. Chapter 791. Creating Swordsmanship. This was something that countless sword principal grandmasters did not dare to imagine. The most they could create was half a move of the swordsmanship. His own sword principal was on a different path. Chu Fengyan was on the path of the 9 regions swordsmanship. The stronger the 9 regions swordsmanship was, the stronger Chu Fengyan would become. If the 9 regions swordsmanship failed, Chu Fengyan would still die. Although the 9 regions swordsmanship was still immature, it could surpass all swordsmanship in the world in the future. Good, good, good. Elder Yun was overjoyed and said the word good 3 times in a row. The best of the best. Good. I was worried that you would bring shame to the heavenly emperor's name. Now, it seems that there is hope for the revival of Cloud Feather Palace. Young master, don't you want swordsmanship? Good. I will impart all the swordsmanship in Cloud Feather Palace to you, Elder Yin said as he closed his eyes. Suddenly, a water screen appeared in front of him. On the water screen, there were countless swordsmanship. There were more than 10,000 swordsmanship that appeared in front of Chu Fengyan. More than 10,000 swordsmanship was more than what was recorded in the ancient books of Sword Principle. The ancient books of Sword Principle contained countless swordsmanship accumulated. Cloud Feather Palace was indeed the top sect 70,000 years ago. There were more than 10,000 swordsmanship recorded. Moreover, many of the swordsmanship were short-lived swordsmanship from ancient times. They had not been passed down to the current era. Although these swordsmanship had countless flaws, they were not without merit. Chu Fengyan looked at them and saw the essence of these swordsmanship. The essence of these swordsmanship was integrated into the 9 regions swordsmanship. The integration of these swordsmanship was enough to transform the 9 regions swordsmanship. Chu Fengyan stood at the same spot for a full 2 hours. His eyes were fixed on the swordsmanship on the water screen from the beginning to the end. Chu Fengyan's body was shrouded in a sword essence. This sword essence was constantly changing, representing the transformation of the 9 regions swordsmanship. Boom! A sharp sword intent suddenly burst out from Chu Fengyan's body. The sword intent seemed to contain the essence of 10,000 swordsmanship, but it was also somewhat different. Chu Fengyan had fused them into one and turned them into a swordsmanship that truly belonged to him. Sword. Chu Fengyan's eyes flickered. In front of him, countless sword wills directly turned into the shape of a spiritual sword. It was extremely sharp and suddenly slashed forward. The power of this sword alone was more powerful than Chu Fengyan's previous all-out attack. If Chu Fengyan used his full strength, his strength would be several times stronger than before he entered Cloud Feather Palace. If Chu Fengyan were to meet Saint Lord Huang again, Chu Fengyan was confident that he could easily kill Saint Lord Huang with his sword. The more perfect his 9-realm swordsmanship was, the more powerful Chu Fengyan was. All right, Chu Fengyan was overjoyed. The more powerful he was, the better. Even the wealth of the entire Cloud Feather Palace was not as useful to Chu Fengyan as the myriad sword arts. 2 hours had passed just like that. Chu Fengyan came back to his senses and realized that 2 hours had passed. Chu Fengyan was immersed in the sword principle. He felt that only a moment had passed, but in reality, 2 hours had passed. Very good. 2 hours is enough to comprehend the myriad sword arts. Your talent in the sword principle is unparalleled. Elder Yin looked at Chu Fengyan and could not help but praise him. Even the most talented sword principle genius would need at least a few days to fully comprehend the myriad sword arts. However, Chu Fengyan had accomplished all of this in just 2 hours. This made Elder Yin extremely amazed. It seems that I can hand over Cloud Feather Palace to young master without any worries. Elder Yin sighed. In the palm of his hand, a formation map suddenly condensed, and he handed it over to Chu Fengyan. The formation map looked exactly like a miniature version of Cloud Feather Palace. This is the core of the formation map of Cloud Feather Palace. As long as you activate your spiritual energy, you'll be able to open a tunnel and directly return to Cloud Feather Palace. Elder Yin looked at Chu Fengyan and said aloud, Cloud Feather Palace is now bound in the returning ruined sky, so you can't take it out. However, you can return to Cloud Feather Palace at any time. If you encounter any danger, you can enter it to hide. There is absolutely no one in Cloud Feather Palace who can hurt young master. Elder Yin said confidently. Cloud Feather Palace was one of the best heaven-grade spiritual artifacts. In terms of grade, it was even superior to the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword and the War Dragon Treasure Carriage. Naturally, there would be no danger if one hid in it and could rest easy. I can't take Cloud Feather Palace away. Chu Fengyan frowned when he heard Elder Yin's words. Elder Yin, do you know the origin of returning ruined sky? Chu Fengyan had always been unclear about the origin of returning ruined sky. Although he had obtained Cloud Feather Palace, It was actually in returning ruins sky. Cloud Feather Palace was only a small part of the entire returning ruins sky. There were countless caves, treasures, and ruins in the entire Cloud Feather Palace. The Cloud Feather Palace was only the tip of the iceberg. No one knew how many treasures there were in the end ruins sky. However, there were definitely treasures that were not inferior to Cloud Feather Palace's ruins. Returning ruins sky was extremely mysterious. No one could see the essence of it clearly. I'm not sure about the origin of this returning ruins heaven. Elder Yin shook his head and said, Cloud Feather Palace used to be located in a barren mountain in the central region, not in the sinkhole sky. However, 50,000 years ago, Cloud Feather Palace was suddenly taken away by a huge force and landed in the sinkhole sky. What? Cloud Feather Palace was taken into returning ruins sky by force? Chu Fengyan was shocked. Cloud Feather Palace was the entire heavenly feather divine region. It was the size of small world. No matter how strong a martial artist was, they would feel extremely insignificant in front of this small world. However, Cloud Feather Palace was actually taken into returning ruins sky by force. How could Chu Fengyan not be surprised? What kind of power was it that could forcibly bring Cloud Feather Palace from the central region to sinkhole heaven? This kind of force was simply beyond Chu Fengyan's imagination. I am only an artifact spirit and cannot leave Cloud Feather Palace. As for returning ruins sky, I do not know much about it. Please forgive me, young master. Elder Yin said. Chapter 792. Elder Yun's answer made Chu Fengyan ponder for a while. He had originally wanted to find out more about the sinkhole sky. Now, it seemed that the returning ruins sky was more mysterious than Chu Fengyan had imagined. It was not just a land of treasures, but also many secrets. Fortunately, there was a formation in the Cloud Feather Palace that led to the 9 regions. He could use the Cloud Feather Palace to return to the returning ruined sky at any time. This was a great advantage. There were many treasures in the returning ruined sky. It was impossible to obtain all of them in a month, especially the Supreme Sword Chi. It was very likely that they were scattered in every corner of the returning ruined sky. With the Cloud Feather Palace, he could come to the returning ruins sky at any time. It was much easier to collect the Supreme Sword Chi. As long as he collected them bit by bit, the 3,000 Supreme Sword Chi would eventually fall into Chu Fengyan's hands. In that case, we'll take our leave first. Since he could come to the Cloud Feather Palace at any time in the future, Chu Fengyan did not need to waste any more time. Now that he had the Cloud Feather Palace, it was time to deal with Lord Huang and the others. Chu Fengyan had always been a man of his words. He had said that he would not let the disciples of the 7 major sects leave the returning ruins sky alive. Naturally, no one would be able to leave alive. Young master, wait. Just as Chu Fengyan turned to leave, Elder Yun suddenly spoke. You can leave, but it's best that she stays. Elder Yin pointed at Han Yueli as he spoke. I have to stay. Han Yueli was puzzled by Elder Yun's action. That's right, little girl. I want you to stay and inherit the cultivation technique of the Cloud Feather Palace. Elder Yin looked at Han Yueli and spoke calmly. Cultivation technique inheritance? Haven't I already learned the sword technique of the Cloud Feather Palace? Chu Fengyan asked. He had already inherited the Cloud Feather Palace, so the inheritance was naturally his. Why did he need someone else? Although you have learned the sword technique of the Cloud Feather Palace, in reality, the sword technique that you created is only a kind of comprehension. It will not be passed down. Old Yin slowly opened his mouth and said, This young lady must have cultivated the Ice Lotus sword technique. This Ice Lotus sword technique actually originated from our Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace. In the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace, there is a cultivation technique that is most suitable for the Ice Lotus sword technique. She's the best choice to inherit the cultivation method of Cloud Feather Palace. The Ice Lotus sword technique actually came from the Cloud Feather Palace? Hearing this, Chu Fengyan was a little surprised. Chu Fengyan knew that the Ice Lotus sword art didn't originate from the master of Sword Dao. It was a sword art passed down by Chu Fengyan's 3rd senior sister. Who would have thought that this swordsmanship actually came from the Cloud Feather Palace? I also feel that after coming to Cloud Feather Palace, my swordsmanship seems somewhat familiar. Hearing this, Hanueli suddenly came to a realization and remembered everything that had happened before. All right, since that's the case, Ueli, you can stay here for the time being and cultivate the cultivation method of the Cloud Feather Palace. Chu Fengmian nodded. Since Hanueli's swordsmanship came from the Cloud Feather Palace, it would be best for her to stay here. Young master, rest assured that Miss Han will be extremely safe in the Cloud Feather Palace. Elder Yun said with a smile. Yes, in the Cloud Feather Palace, there is no need to worry about Hanueli's safety. With Elder Yun's strength, even those experts who had surpassed the life and death realm were no match for him. Moreover, in the returning ruined sky, it was impossible for any expert to hurt him. Let's go. Chu Fengmian's body moved. Suddenly, he turned into a ray of light and flew out of the palace. After inheriting the Cloud Feather Palace and obtaining the seal of the Cloud Feather Palace, the pressure that Cloud Feather Palace exerted on him dissipated. This allowed Chu Fengmian to use the ray of light again. His every move was no longer restricted. Heavenly Feather Divine Region, close it. Chu Fengmian held the array diagram in his hand and snorted coldly. The entire Heavenly Feather Divine Region obeyed Chu Fengmian's orders. Suddenly, the valley in the sky closed abruptly. The entire Heavenly Feather Divine Region couldn't fly out, not even a fly. After obtaining the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace, Chu Fengmian was now the master of the Heavenly Feather Divine Region, the true supreme ruler. His ray of light flew out with a leap. Outside Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace, countless disciples of the 7 great sects were still waiting in front of the palace gates. Some of the martial practitioners from the other sects seemed to have noticed that the Heavenly Feather Divine territory had suddenly been sealed off, and none of them could leave. They seemed to be discussing something. Senior brother, the Heavenly Feather Divine region is completely closed. A disciple of the desolate ancient sect asked uneasily, "What should we do? Why are you panicking? That kid Chu Fengmian just had a fortuitous encounter. I don't believe that he can hide in the Cloud Feather Palace for the rest of his life." St. Huang's eyes flashed with killing intent. He could have left long ago, but he had no intention of doing so. He hated Chu Fengmian to the core. Chu Fengmian had killed the people of the 7 major sects and snatched the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace from his hands. He couldn't tolerate it. If he didn't kill Chu Fengmian, the anger in his heart would never be extinguished. As long as he killed Chu Fengmian, the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace would still belong to him. The disciples of the 7 major sects all stayed in front of the palace gate. Under St. Huang's orders, they didn't dare to leave without permission. Boom! Just as the crowd was discussing, the gate of the Cloud Feather Palace suddenly opened. A figure could be seen slowly walking out from the crowd. It seems that everyone has been waiting for me. Chu Fengmian's figure walked out of the palace gate. He looked at the crowd with a smile. Not a single one of them left. Very good. If all the disciples of the 7 major sects had left just now, Chu Fengmian would be in trouble. After all, leaving the Heavenly Feather Divine region was the Sinkhole Sky. The Sinkhole Sky was vast and boundless. It wouldn't be easy for Chu Fengmian to catch all of them one by one. Now that they were all gathered here, it was just right. This would save Chu Fengmian the trouble of searching for them one by one. "Kid, you still dare to come out?" A disciple of the desolate ancient sect shouted angrily when he saw Chu Fengmian. "What did you get from the Cloud Feather Palace? Hand it all over now. Otherwise, with so many of us attacking together, you will definitely die." Bam! Before the desolate ancient sect disciple could finish his sentence, his chest was pierced by a ray of sword light. His entire body was shredded into pieces. Chapter 793. In the blink of an eye, the desolate ancient sect disciple turned into a cloud of blood mist and dissipated into the air. A faint smell of blood permeated the air, causing all the warriors present to be stunned. A desolate ancient sect disciple fell just like that in front of Chu Fengmian. Moreover, no one had seen how Chu Fengmian had killed a disciple of the desolate ancient sect without making a sound. Not bad. Chu Fengmian coldly snorted. The desolate ancient sect disciples' blood essence had been devoured by him. These desolate ancient sect disciples were the elites of the 7 great sections. Each of them had obtained many fortuitous encounters. The power contained in their blood essence had been completely devoured by Chu Fengyan. Good. Seems like devouring all of your blood essence is enough for me to advance to the 7th level of life and death realm. Chu Fengyan looked at the disciples of the 7 great sections. There were dozens of them. After killing them and devouring their blood essence, Chu Fengyan's cultivation could advance to the next level. Junior brother Hua. Damn it. Compared to Chu Fengyan's relaxed expression, the desolate ancient sect disciples roared madly. They were furious to the extreme. Now, that Chu Fengyan had killed them in front of everyone, it meant that he didn't put the desolate ancient sect in his eyes. This was an insult to the desolate ancient sect, or even the 7 great sections. Kid, die for me. The Huang sage could no longer remain silent. Suddenly, the aura on his body burst out. Waves of extremely ancient energy burst out from the Huang sage's body and condensed on his fist wind. Suddenly, a fist flew towards Chu Fengyan. This fist contained the power of the desolate ancient sect, as if it came from a distant era. It tore through the air, intending to kill Chu Fengyan. Saint Lord Huang had used his ultimate move, the desolate ancient sect's strongest desolate divine fist. With a punch, heaven and earth shook. The desolate ancient sect disciples around Saint Lord Huang couldn't help but kneel on the ground when they felt the aura from Saint Lord Huang's body. Under this aura, these peak life and death realm martial artists could only tremble. Life-shattering realm. Saint Lord Huang has reached the life-shattering realm, transcending life and death. Sage Huang did it. When the other martial artists sensed the aura coming from Saint Lord Huang, their faces changed as they shouted out loudly. This kind of power had already surpassed the scope of the life and death realm. It was the power of the first step of the life and death steps, the life-shattering realm. No wonder Saint Huang wanted to kill Chu Fengyan. He has already surpassed life and death. Xing Yun, who was watching from the side, muttered to himself when he saw this scene. Sage Huang was wholeheartedly waiting outside the palace gates to kill Chu Fengyan. Now, Xing Yun finally understood why Sage Huang was so confident. Transcending life and death to reach life-saving was countless times more difficult than passing the great calamity of life and death. However, once one transcended life and death and reached the life-shatter realm, it would be a completely different level from the life and death realm. Moreover, Sage Huang was a peerless genius of the desolate ancient sect. Once he transcended life and death, his strength would be much more terrifying than ordinary life-shatterer experts. When he used the desolate ancient divine fist as a life-shatterer expert, it was simply disdainful. No life and death expert could resist it. Chu Fengyan, even if you obtain the inheritance of Cloud, Feather, Heavenly Palace, it's useless. I've already reached the life-shatterer realm. In front of me, you're nothing but an ant. Letting you obtain the inheritance of Cloud, Feather, Heavenly Palace was indeed my carelessness. However, the inheritance of Cloud, Feather, Heavenly Palace will still belong to me in the end. Sage Huang looked at Chu Fengyan and released his full strength, no longer holding back. He had been concealing his strength all along. Most of the martial artists present didn't know that Sage Huang had already reached the life-shatterer realm. He had lured people here so that he could kill Chu Fengyan and seize all of his opportunities. The power of life-shatterer. I'll let you feel it. Bang! An illusory figure appeared behind Saint Lord Huang. The aura of this illusory figure was incomparably ancient. It made Saint Lord Huang look like a war god that had returned from the primordial era. His fist fused with the phantom, and the fist wind's power was countless times stronger. An incomparably terrifying power directly bombarded Chu Fengyan. Life-shatter realm, not bad. Seems like compared to Sword Ancestor Huang and War God Lu, you're still a bit stronger. Facing Sage Huang's fist, Chu Fengyan's face was still calm. It was as if he didn't put this extremely terrifying power in his eyes. Sword come. The ancestral dragon supreme sword suddenly appeared in Chu Fengmian's hand. Suddenly, he grasped the sword and pulled it out. The sword light soared into the sky. Break! Chu Fengmian only said one word. His sword light soared into the sky and turned into an incomparably huge river. Countless sharp sword chi formed a river and soared into the sky. The ancient fist was instantly shattered in front of the sword light. The power contained within it was completely neutralized. Chu Fengmian was able to easily block such a terrifying punch with a single slash of his sword. What? Impossible! Gubai stood at the side. Seeing Chu Fengmian block Sage Huang's fist so casually, his face revealed an expression of disbelief. If Gubai were to block the power contained in Sage Huang's fist, he would have been killed without any suspense. Even 1/10 of its power was enough to sweep away all the martial artists present. However, such power was still broken by Chu Fengmian's sword. This person, he actually has the strength of life shatter a realm. Another martial artist cried out in alarm. They all knew that Chu Fengmian's strength was extremely powerful. However, no one could guess to what extent Chu Fengmian's strength had reached. But now, Sage Huang had already reached the life shatterer realm. Even with his full strength, Chu Fengmian still easily blocked it. This also meant that Chu Fengmian's strength had also reached the life shatterer realm. And Chu Fengmian was merely at the 6th level of life and death realm. Monster! How could such a monster appear in the 9 regions? No one in history could do this. Kill! If such a monster is left in the 9 regions, how can we stand out? Suddenly, countless killing intent enveloped Chu Fengmian's body. Some of the powerhouses among the martialists could no longer hold themselves back. Suddenly, countless martial techniques erupted in the air and bombarded Chu Fengmian. Chapter 794. Other than the geniuses of the 7 major sects, there were also many experts present. Among them, the power that was attacking Chu Fengmian was not inferior to Sword Ancestor Huang and the others. Now that these hidden geniuses had seen Chu Fengmian's strength, they were all filled with murderous intent. They wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. The martial skills in the sky gathered in the air and turned into a 5-colored ray of light, suppressing Chu Fengmian. This 5-colored light contained thousands of martial skills and supreme killing moves, forming such a 5-colored light. My swordsmanship has reached the great completion. In the 9 regions, no one is my match. You still dare to attack me? Just nice. I will use your blood essence to increase my strength. Chu Fengmian faced the 5-colored ray of light and laughed. Suddenly, he unsheathed the sword in his hand. The sword flashed and slashed in the air. It slashed at the 5-colored ray of light. Under the sword, the 5-colored ray of light began to shatter from the center. In the next moment, it shattered. Chu Fengmian's sword had actually broken all the 5-killing moves of these martial artists who had joined forces. After the 5-colored ray of light was broken, it was completely destroyed by the sword. There was nothing left. How is this possible? Just the power of one sword is enough to break our joint attack. How can his swordsmanship be so terrifying? What kind of swordsmanship is this? Where did this kid come from? This swordsmanship is more terrifying than any other swordsmanship in the 9 regions. Cloud Feather Palace. It must be the swordsmanship of Cloud Feather Palace. This kid has learned it. The warriors looked at Chu Fengmian and exclaimed in surprise. They were all discussing. Humph. So what if you know the swordsmanship of Cloud Feather Palace? Today, your death is already destined. I will kill you and take all the opportunities you have. Saint Huang looked at Chu Fengmian and shouted crazily. Suddenly, an ancient door opened in front of him. Behind the ancient door, there was a whistling ancient aura. It was the desolate ancient door. Saint Huang had opened the door to the desolate ancient door. An endless stream of desolate ancient divine power was added to his body. The 7 major sects. The supreme sects. Chu Fengmian, I will let you know the consequences of going against the 7 major sects. Saint Huang waved his hand. Suddenly, a bronze halberd appeared in his hand from the desolate ancient door. When the bronze halberd appeared, the entire space was filled with an ancient feeling. The patterns on the bronze halberd were inscriptions from the desolate ancient era. The Great Desolate Halberd. This is the supreme weapon that used to stir up chaos in the desolate ancient era. In the desolate antiquity era, it was a weapon that had killed countless experts. With the desolate ancient halberd in his hand, Saint Lord Huang's power skyrocketed. The desolate ancient sect's power was originally linked to the desolate ancient era, using the desolate ancient god's power. The Great Desolate Ancient Halberd was the most perfect spiritual artifact for the desolate Saint Lord, as it was intimately fused with his strength. Desolate Ancient Desolate Mountain. The desolate Great Halberd in Saint Lord Huang's hand suddenly waved as he smashed it towards Chu Fengyan. As the halberd attacked, the mountains and rivers crumbled and the heavens and earth shook. Countless ancient experts that had died under the desolate ancient halberd had their spirits entwined around it. They roared and added their strength. The power of the halberd was unstoppable. The desolate ancient halberd? If the real desolate ancient halberd was here, I might be afraid. But you're just a small shadow. You want to go against me? Chu Fengyan snorted in disdain. The ancestral dragon supreme, sword in his hand, seemed to have sensed the aura of the desolate ancient halberd. The real desolate ancient halberd was an extreme immortal weapon in the legends. If Saint Huang had the real desolate ancient halberd, Chu Fengyan would have to retreat. Although Chu Fengyan had the emperor jar, it was broken. It was far from being comparable to a real extreme immortal weapon. But now, the desolate ancient halberd in Saint Huang's hand was just a shadow, formed by his supreme strength and ancient divine power. Chu Fengyan wasn't afraid of a mere shadow of an extreme immortal weapon. Sword breaking heaven and earth. Chu Fengyan slashed his sword in the air. The tip of the sword collided with the halberd in midair. One of the two forces was the supreme treasure of the dragon clan, the ancestral dragon paragon sword, while the other was the shadow of an ancient ominous weapon, the extreme immortal weapon, the great ancient halberd. As the two forces collided, many martial artists who didn't manage to dodge in time were sucked in. Almost in an instant, the terrifying spiritual power tore their bodies apart. Just the aftermath alone was enough to make a life-shatterer martial artist unable to escape unscathed. As for these life-and-death martial artists, they would die for sure if they were sucked in. "Break for me!" Chu Fengyan shouted coldly. Suddenly, a crisp sound rang out in the air. The illusory image of the ancient halberd suddenly shattered. Even the shadow of an extreme immortal weapon couldn't contend with the ancestral dragon supreme sword's edge. The desolate ancient halberd shattered just like that. Too terrifying. Is he still human? Sixth level life and death realm is enough to contend with life-shatterer martial artists, and even have the upper hand. Some of the martial artists who attacked Chu Fengyan just now already had the thought of retreating. Chu Fengyan's strength was too terrifying. However, the killing intent in most people's eyes was even thicker now. The more powerful Chu Fengyan became, the more it proved how precious the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace was, even if they knew Chu Fengyan's current strength. Even if they knew Chu Fengyan's current strength, it was enough to make most of the martial artists take the risk to obtain the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace. Suddenly, dozens of martial artists attacked Chu Fengyan at the same time. The number of martial artists attacking this time was much more than the previous time. The disciples of Black Heaven Sect and Candle Flame Sect also attacked. Even if it meant a life and death struggle, they would fight Chu Fengyan to death. Since you don't know the difference between life and death, don't blame me. Chu Fengyan suddenly snorted. His sword moved again, turning into tens of thousands of sword chi in the air and annihilating the countless martial arts. When the martial artists who had attacked saw this scene, they all wanted to step back. However, before they could retreat, countless sword chis had already pierced towards their chests. The sword chi swept across and killed the martial artists on the spot. Bam! 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 Chapter 795. The moment the sword aura swept across, 7 or 8 cultivators died on the spot, spurting out blood essence from their bodies. They turned into clouds of blood mist. The entire area in front of the palace was filled with the thick smell of blood. Run! The faces of several martial artists who were slightly stronger and barely dodged the sword chi changed. They turned around and retreated, trying to escape. Don't even think about leaving today. All of you will stay here. Chu Fengyan sneered. Within his body, a total of 100,000 spiritual swords were unsheathed. The mysterious black sword array had completely sealed off the surrounding square. Several warriors who tried to force their way through were all killed by the black mysterious sword array. Not a single one of them was able to escape. Miserable shrieks rang out one after another. The 10,000 sword chi chased after countless martial artists. Those martial artists who had attacked Chu Fengyan before were all killed by the sword chi without exception. Not a single one of them could escape. Saint Lord Huang, you still want to escape? Chu Fengyan swept his gaze and saw Saint Lord Huang's figure. Right now, Saint Lord Huang no longer cared about his face and wanted to escape. His escape light was even faster than the black profound sword formation's spiritual swords. After all, as a life-shatterer expert, Saint Lord Huang's strength wasn't something other martial artists could compare to. However, even so, it was impossible for him to escape from Chu Fengyan's hands. No one can escape from my hands. Chu Fengyan took a step forward and turned into an escape light, chasing after Saint Lord Huang. Right now, his strength wasn't suppressed by the Cloud Feather Palace. He could use escape light at any time. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived before Saint Lord Huang and slashed down with his sword. Right now, even a casual slash from Chu Fengyan was enough to kill a life and death expert. It was much stronger than the sword Dao of thousands of sword Dao masters. This sword edge was already rushing towards Saint Lord Huang's chest as it slashed down ferociously. Desolate great Dao. Saint Lord Huang howled out. Boundless amounts of primordial power gathered beneath his feet to form an ancient path. Standing on it, Saint Lord Huang was high and mighty. It was as though no attacks could hurt him. Primordial Dao? In front of me, this kind of petty trick is meaningless. Break for me. Chu Fengyan sneered and slashed his sword towards Saint Lord Huang. The desolate ancient Dao beneath the feet of Saint Lord Huang was instantly shattered by this single slash of the sword. Even if Lord Huang were to utilize the power of the Dao of Desolation, he would still be unable to withstand a single blow from Chu Fengyan. If it had been in the past, perhaps Chu Fengyan would have wasted some means to deal with the primordial Dao. But now, his 9-zone sword technique was enough to slay everything in the world. Even if he was in the desolate ancient era, Saint Lord Huang would still die. A life-shatterer expert was nothing in front of Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan's current strength was enough to stand on equal footing with those old antiques who had transcended life and death. Even if Saint Lord Huang was a genius, meeting Chu Fengyan today would be the end of him. Break! Chu Fengyan's sword pierced through Huang Shengjuan's chest. In an instant, all of his internal organs were destroyed. However, his surging life force was able to condense once again the moment the sword chi was destroyed. Once a martial artist who had transcended life and death. As long as there was still a trace of spiritual energy in his body, he would be able to condense a new body and become almost immortal. Because of this, it was considered to have transcended life and death. Unless one was extremely strong and could kill Saint Lord Huang in a single blow, no one would be able to kill him. Kid, don't waste your energy. I have already stepped onto the life and death steps and am an immortal existence. Even if you kill me 10,000 times, I can still recover. Saint Lord Huang looked at Chu Fengyan and suddenly laughed. Indeed, he was no match for Chu Fengyan now. However, it was almost impossible for Chu Fengyan to kill him. Even if Chu Fengyan were to kill him again and again with his life force, he could still recover time and time again. Kid, let me go now and give me half of the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace. I can keep the news of you obtaining the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace a secret and join forces with you to kill everyone else. Saint Lord Huang's expression changed continuously as if he had caught hold of Chu Fengyan's weakness. He sneered, "You can't kill me. One day, you will be able to escape and spread the news of you. Countless experts from the 7 major sects will hunt you down. Think about what you want to do. Are you threatening me? Chu Fengmian couldn't help but laugh coldly when he heard Saint Lord Huang's words. He, Chu Fengmian, had never been threatened by anyone before. That's right. So what if I'm threatening you? You're not a life shatterer. You will never be able to kill me. As long as I am alive, I will spread all your secrets. Saint Lord Huang looked at Chu Fengmian's anger and laughed. Now, give me half of the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace and join forces with me. This is your only choice. Is that so? Do you really think that I can't kill you? Chu Fengmian looked at Saint Lord Huang as if he was looking at a clown. Such an immortal body could only be killed by experts who had transcended life and death. This was an unchangeable rule. However, this was only applicable to others. To Chu Fengmian, such a rule had no meaning. Since he could defeat Saint Lord Huang, he could naturally kill Saint Lord Huang as well. Creation. Chu Fengmian didn't waste any more time. With a thought, the power of creation from his origin, sword energy, surged into the sword and entered Saint Lord Huang's body. I told you it's useless. No matter how many times you kill me, I can always be revived. Saint Lord Huang was still laughing when he saw Chu Fengmian's actions. However, in the next moment, his laughter came to an abrupt stop. Under the might of this power of creation, the life force of Saint Lord Huang was being extinguished continuously. Even his immortal, indestructible body would be destroyed by the power of creation. No, this is impossible. I don't believe it. I have transcended life and death. Immortal and indestructible. How can I die? Saint Lord Huang shouted crazily. His eyes were filled with fear, and he no longer had the arrogance from before. He couldn't understand why his immortal, indestructible body couldn't be restored like this. The power of creation was the most powerful force in the world. Even the immortal, indestructible body was meaningless in front of the power of creation. I told you, no one can survive if I want to kill them. Die. Chu Fengmian looked at Saint Lord Huang's craziness and snorted coldly. The power of creation spread out from Saint Lord Huang's body. Chapter 796. Under the power of fortune, Saint Monarch Huang's body was instantly annihilated. His body could no longer reform, and it shattered in an instant. Chu Fengmian opened his mouth and swallowed all of the blood essence. Life-shatterer blood essence. Powerful indeed. This Saint Monarch Huang actually obtained more than a dozen opportunities. Chu Fengmian devoured the blood essence of Saint Lord Huang. The blood essence turned into countless pure spiritual energies in Chu Fengmian's body, filling every corner of his body. The blood essence of Saint Monarch Huang was much more powerful than the blood essence of 100 desolate ancient sect disciples. From the blood essence, Chu Fengmian could sense the countless fortuitous encounters that Saint Monarch Huang had obtained. These fortuitous encounters fused with Saint Monarch Huang's blood essence and became his strength. But now all of this belonged to Chu Fengmian. 7th level of life and death realm. In almost an instant, Chu Fengmian's aura rose steadily. His cultivation had also reached the 7th level of life and death realm. Devouring this desolate Saint Lord was definitely not inferior to obtaining any treasure. Saint Monarch Huang's spatial ring was also obtained by Chu Fengmian. The treasures inside were piled up like a mountain. All the treasures obtained from Cloud Feather Palace were now back in Chu Fengmian's hands. Good. With the treasures of Cloud Feather Palace, I'll be able to surpass life and death and make preparations for breaking through to Life Shatterer realm. Chu Fengmian calmly put away the empty ring. Although Chu Fengmian's cultivation was still at the 7th level of life and death realm, he was already planning how to break through to Life Shatterer realm. For other martial artists, it would take them at least 3 to 5 years to break through each level of the life and death realm. But Chu Fengmian was different. As long as he had enough spirit power, there would be no bottleneck for the battle dragon art that he cultivated. Although he was only at the 7th level of life and death realm, he had already reached the 7th level. Although he was only at the 7th level of life and death realm, If Chu Fengmian was willing, he could instantly reach the peak of life and death realm by devouring a portion of the treasures in Cloud Feather Palace. For Chu Fengmian, this was not difficult at all. As long as he had enough spiritual energy, he could break through at any time. However, Chu Fengmian had no intention of doing so. He had left behind all his treasures for when he broke through to the Life Shatterer stage. Although it was easy for Chu Fengmian to make breakthroughs normally, his bottleneck was thousands or even tens of thousands of times more difficult than ordinary martial artists. He had gone through innumerable trials and tribulations to pass the life and death stare, which was hundreds of times more difficult than the life-saving level. Therefore, Chu Fengmian had to make plans early. Another breakthrough. Countless warriors watched Chu Fengmian make a breakthrough. Now, it was not strange. For other warriors, it was extremely difficult to make a breakthrough, but for Chu Fengmian, it was so easy. When Chu Fengmian first came to the Heavenly Feather Domain, he was just a small fry. Who would have thought that Chu Fengmian would obtain the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace? At the scene, other than the Alpha Hall disciples, all the disciples of the 7 great sects, as well as the warriors who had attacked Chu Fengmian, were all killed. No one was left alive. Brother Chu, thank you for sparing our lives. Xing Yun of the Alpha Hall suddenly walked out from the crowd and said to Chu Fengmian, the disciples of the 7 great sects were all killed, except for the disciples of the Alpha Hall. Indeed, Chu Fengmian was especially merciful to spare their lives. It's fine. All of this is to repay your kindness. You saved Yuli once, so I will spare your Alpha Hall this time. Chu Fengmian looked at Xing Yun and calmly swept his gaze across the disciples of the Alpha Hall. This kindness will only be given once. Next time, if you become my enemy, I will kill you all. Although Chu Fengmian's voice was calm, the killing intent in it was enough to make people shudder. If a warrior dared to speak to the disciples of the Alpha Hall like this before, everyone would only think that he was a lunatic. It was absolutely impossible. But now, when it came from Chu Fengmian's mouth, none of the warriors present dared to doubt it. Chu Fengmian killed Lord Huang and annihilated the other 6 great sections. Everyone present saw all of this. No matter what, Brother Chu has spared our lives this time. This is a great kindness to the Alpha Hall. I, Xing Yun, will never become Brother Chu's enemy. Xing Yun looked at Chu Fengmian with flickering eyes and said, if Brother Chu has any instructions in the future, I, Xing Yun, will definitely report to you. Let's go. After saying all this, Xing Yun left with the other disciples of the Alpha Hall. The Thunderstorm Valley was reopened by Chu Fengmian. Countless warriors in the Heavenly Feather Divine region left one after another. This Xing Yun is a smart person. Hearing Xing Yun's words, Chu Fengmian smiled. The meaning of Xing Yun's words was to rope him in. However, it was fine. Chu Fengmian did not care about a mere disciple of the Alpha Hall. His true enemies were the old antiques of the 7 great sections. As for the other disciples, as long as they did not become enemies with Chu Fengmian would let a few of them go. When all the warriors in the Heavenly Feather Divine region had left, Chu Fengmian slowly got up. With a wave of his hand, the Thunderstorm Valley disappeared. From now on, the Cloud Feather Palace belonged to Chu Fengmian alone. No one will be allowed to enter it. After sealing the entrance of the Heavenly Feather Divine region, Chu Fengmian moved his body and turned into a spatial tunnel in front of him. He stepped into it. Not long after, in the returning ruins sky, a crack suddenly appeared. Chu Fengmian's figure landed on the returning ruins continent. Ordinary warriors, even those who had transcended life and death, could not tear the space in the returning ruined sky and form a spatial tunnel. However, Chu Fengmian was now recognized as the master of the Cloud Feather Palace. He was considered half a person of the returning ruined sky. Therefore, he was not suppressed by the laws and could travel freely in the returning ruined sky. There are traces of supreme sword chi in many corners of the returning ruins continent. Chu Fengmian scanned his surroundings and found many traces of supreme sword chi. The first thing Chu Fengmian did when he returned to the returning ruined sky was to continue collecting supreme sword chi. Previously, he had wasted a lot of time because of the Cloud Feather Palace. Now, more than 20 days had passed in a month. Although Chu Fengmian had the Cloud Feather Palace and could leave the returning ruined sky at any time, he could only stay for a month and a half at most. If he stayed for too long, others might discover the secret of the Cloud Feather Palace. The Cloud Feather Palace did not need to wait for 3 years. One could enter and leave the returning ruined sky at any time. It was definitely a treasure that the 7 great sects wanted. Chu Fengmian could not be exposed now. Only when I have enough power will I not have to hide like this. Let's go. Chu Fengmian moved his body and turned into a beam of light. He flew in the direction of the Supreme Sword Chi. Chapter 797. In the blink of an eye, a few days had passed. It had been a month since Chu Fengmian had arrived at the returning ruined sky. The opening of the returning ruined sky would close in a few more hours. Now that Chu Fengmian had arrived in the returning ruined sky, he gradually understood some things about the returning ruined sky. The returning ruins sky was much bigger than Chu Fengmian had imagined. It was boundless and would only open once every 3 years for a total of 1 month. If one did not leave within this 1 month, they would have to wait for another 3 years. It seems that there are no traces of Supreme Sword Chi around here. On a mountain peak in the returning ruins continent, there was a huge sword formation in front of Chu Fengmian. A total of 60 Supreme Sword Chi formed the sword formation and blasted towards Chu Fengmian. Over the past few days, Chu Fengmian had been searching for Supreme Sword Chi and constantly reclaiming it. Now, Chu Fengmian had more than 300 Supreme Sword Chi in his hands. The moment these Supreme Sword Chi were all displayed, the sharpness of the sword was enough to kill all living things in the surroundings. These 300 Supreme Sword Chi had also benefited Chu Fengmian's 9 regions sword principle and improved it further. As long as Chu Fengmian's strength made another breakthrough, it would be enough to reflect his strength. The mystery of the Supreme Sword Chi was gradually comprehended by Chu Fengmian. In terms of sword principle comprehension, Chu Fengmian could be said to be the best in the world. Even the former sword principle master had to admit that he was inferior. If an ordinary sword cultivator were to comprehend the mysteries of the Supreme Sword Chi, they would not be able to comprehend all of it in their lifetime. However, to Chu Fengmian, it was a piece of cake. He comprehended all of the sword principles and integrated them into the 9 regions sword principle, becoming Chu Fengmian's power. Chu Fengmian's realm had already reached the peak of the 7th level of the life and death realm, and could break through to the 8th level of the life and death realm at any time. His 9 regions sword principle was gradually perfected. Even now, the 9 region sword principle was not inferior to any heaven-level sword principle. It was enough to make countless sword cultivators fight for it. In terms of sword principle, Chu Fengmian was an out-and-out giant. A bunch of Supreme Sword Chis want to resist me? Suppress all of them. Chu Fengmian sneered as he looked at the sword array formed by the Supreme Sword Chi. Suddenly, he charged forward with the ancestral Dragon Supreme sword in his hand. The power of the 300 or so Supreme Sword Chi around Chu Fengmian was also added to the Supreme Sword Chi. Immediately, the sharpness of the sword edge became more than 100 times more terrifying. He thrust out his sword. In an instant, the sword formation was completely broken. With a wave of Chu Fengmian's hand, the more than 60 Supreme Sword Chi were directly collected by Chu Fengmian and devoured into her body. They were all refined in an instant. Chu Fengmian's sword will have become even stronger. 400. After collecting more than 60 Supreme Sword Chis, the number of Supreme Sword Chis in Chu Fengmian's body had reached 400. This was already 4 to 5 times more than when Chu Fengmian had killed the Desolate Saint. Good. With 400 Supreme Sword Chis, even if I encounter a martial artist in the first 3 steps of the life and death steps, I will still be in an invincible position. Chu Fengmian felt the power in her body and couldn't help but sigh in her heart. The life and death steps were divided into 9 steps. The first 3 steps of the life and death steps were the life-shattering realm, the immortal realm, and the undying realm. These 3 realms were the first 3 steps of the life and death steps. When Chu Fengyan first came to the End Ruins Heaven, even if a life-shattering realm martial artist attacked him, he could only escape. There was no other way to resist. Although he could contend for a bit, he was bound to lose. There was no suspense. Previously, Chu Fengyan had easily killed St. Lord Huang, a life-shatterer expert. To the current Chu Fengyan, now, even if he encountered a martial artist in the second step of the life and death steps, or even a martial artist in the third step of the life and death steps, Chu Fengyan had enough capital to fight and even win. With his current strength in the 8th layer of life and death realm, he could do all this. No one would believe him. However, Chu Fengyan had obtained too many fortuitous encounters. The inheritance of Cloud, Feather, Heavenly Palace, Supreme, Sword Cheese, Ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword, Fortune Power, and even the Battle Dragon Art. Every single one of them was a heaven-shaking and earth-shattering opportunity. Now, Chu Fengyan had obtained all of them, which allowed him to possess such terrifying strength. However, Chu Fengyan could only defeat the first 3 steps of the life and death steps. The 9 steps of the life and death steps were life-shattering realm, immortal realm, divine martial realm, heart-refining realm, heaven's mandate realm, and immortal realm. The first 3 steps of the life and death steps, life-shattering realm, and immortal realm, were mainly changes in vitality. There was no qualitative change in strength. However, the 4th step of the life and death steps, the immortal realm, was completely different. The 4th step of the life and death steps, the flawless realm, represented the flawless body of a cultivator. Reaching this realm would remove all impurities from the cultivator's body, allowing the cultivator's body to reach a state of perfection. Once the transformation was successful, the martial artist's strength would soar countless times. Given Chu Fengyan's current strength, he wasn't sure if he could contend against a martial artist in the immortal realm. However, Chu Fengyan wasn't worried. He now had a new trump card, the Cloud Feather Palace. If he encountered an expert he couldn't defeat, Chu Fengyan could retreat to the Cloud Feather Palace. It was enough to make him invincible. Chu Fengyan's greatest gain after coming to the End Ruins Sky wasn't the Supreme Sword Qi, but the Cloud Feather Palace. The Cloud Feather Palace was enough to make up for Chu Fengyan's life. It's time to leave. Chu Fengyan had already sensed that the nomological laws of the End Ruins Sky had begun to change. It was about to close. Although Chu Fengyan could use the magic array of the Cloud Feather Palace to leave, it was very likely that others would suspect that Chu Fengyan had a way to enter and exit the Cloud Feather Palace. Chu Fengyan didn't want to expose himself so early. Let's go. Chu Fengyan's body moved. The escaping light entered his sword and flew directly toward the exit of the End Ruins Sky. This time, Chu Fengyan wanted to see how the people of the Yi family would deal with him when he returned. Chu Fengyan's escaping light continued to fly. Suddenly, a crack appeared in front of him. Behind this crack was the 9 states. Whoosh! Chu Fengyan's escaping light rushed out without stopping. Chapter 798. Western Region, Guishu City. During the 1 month that the returning ruin sky had been open, many top powers outside the returning ruin city had not left. They had all been waiting quietly for the martialists in the returning ruins sky to leave. This was especially so for the experts from the 7 great sections. Currently, all of them were waiting outside and chatting with one another. Between the brows of many of the experts, there were traces of impatience. Guishu Sky is about to close. Why hasn't anyone come out yet? An expert from the Sky Sword sect, whose body radiated a piercing sword will, looked at the returning ruined sky with a hint of nervousness in his eyes. The crack in Guishu Sky was getting smaller and smaller. It was very likely that it would close in a couple of hours. But now, none of the disciples from the Tianjin sect had come out of Guishu Sky. Some warriors who entered Guishu Sky would die inside, but none of them had come out. This was definitely enough to make them feel extremely strange. Since the opening of Guishu Sky, such a thing had never happened. It's not just the people from the Tianjin sect. Our people from the Desolate Ancient sect have not come out either. Another venerable beside the expert from the Sky Sword sect spoke. I wonder what happened in Guishu Sky this time. Could it be that some ancient inheritance treasure has been opened? Is that why they haven't come out yet? But no one has come out yet. The warriors from the seven sects were all talking about it. But apart from the seven sects, many disciples from other forces had come out. None of the disciples from the seven sects had come out. Whoosh! Just as the crowd was conversing, a streak of light suddenly flew out from within. What a fast escape light! Who is this person? Some people looked over. The escape light speed was much faster than that of ordinary life and death realm warriors. Is that Chu Fengmian, the first person on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region? An expert suddenly recognized Chu Fengmian's identity and shouted loudly. The first person on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region? A newcomer? How could he have such an escape light? He must have found a great opportunity in the sinkhole heaven. Chu Fengmian, a newcomer who had just entered the Omega Ruins heaven, possessed such a light. This meant that he had obtained many opportunities in the Omega Ruins heaven. However, Chu Fengmian's escape light flashed past and did not stop. Very soon, he had left the returning ruined city. Chu Fengmian had already sensed that there were many experts hidden around the returning ruined sky. These hidden experts looked at Chu Fengmian with murderous intent. The fact that Chu Fengmian's strength had greatly increased after leaving Omega Sky meant that he must have obtained a lot of benefits from the place. Many of these warriors had the idea of killing Chu Fengmian. Although Chu Fengmian came from a North Sea Academy, the forces behind these powerhouses were not inferior to the North Sea Academy. They wanted to kill Chu Fengmian, so naturally, they weren't afraid of the forces behind him. Although these people were no match for Chu Fengmian, they would inevitably expose his true strength if they clashed with him. To avoid trouble, it was better to leave now. Lord Demon General, aren't we going to kill him? Outside the returning ruined city, a few figures watched Chu Fengmian's departure with flickering eyes. One of them couldn't help but ask. This person has killed countless geniuses of our Earth Demon sect. Now that he has obtained a great opportunity in the returning ruins heaven, he will become a great threat if we don't kill him. This is the Western region, after all. It's not easy to take action. We have plenty of ways to deal with him when we reach the northern region. The demon general of the Earth Demon sect snorted coldly. This person is now a great threat to our Earth Demon sect. The sect master has already formulated a plan. When he returns to the northern region, it will be his death. As they conversed, the group of Earth Demon sect warriors left one after another. On the other side, Chu Fengmian flew all the way to a city in the northern region, Dongxing City. Dongxing City wasn't far from the returning ruined city, and there were teleportation arrays that could lead to other cities. The western region was vast, and with Chu Fengmian's current strength, it was extremely difficult for him to fly across. Therefore, he could only go to a city first and use the teleportation array to return to the northern region. Dongxing City wasn't considered big, and it was equivalent to a remote place in the victorious martial country. There were a few saints, and they were considered the strongest in the city. Stop! Those who enter the city have to pay a lower-grade spirit stone. Chu Fengmian landed in front of the city gate, and a few warriors surrounded him. The leader of the warriors spoke. Here, with a thought, Chu Fengmian took out a low-grade spirit stone from his empty ring and threw it to the warrior. Then he stepped into Dongxing City. With his current strength, if he showed his aura, these little guards wouldn't dare to stop Chu Fengmian. Even the city lord of Dongxing City had to be respectful to Chu Fengmian. However, it was only a lower-grade spirit stone. It was nothing compared to Chu Fengmian's wealth. Chu Fengmian was too lazy to bother, and he directly paid the spirit stone and entered. As soon as he entered Dongxing City, the sound of hawking rang in his ears. There were many shops on both sides of the street, selling spirit herbs, spirit weapons, and so on. There were also some stalls nearby, and the owners of these stalls were mostly warriors with weak strength. They occasionally obtained some things to sell in exchange for elixirs and spirit stones for cultivation. Chu Fengmian glanced at the items being sold and lost interest in them. Any of the heavenly wonders in his empty ring was 1,000 times or even 10,000 times better than the items being sold by these people. Chu Fengmian was just looking around because he had nothing to do. This is a good thing. Chu Fengmian glanced over and suddenly saw 3 golden bamboos in one of the stalls. On the leaves of these 3 golden bamboos, speckles of gold could be seen. Pure gold bamboo, good stuff. Chu Fengmian moved his feet and walked toward the stall. The owner of the stall was a 17 or 18-year-old girl. Her strength wasn't strong, and she was only in the body refining realm. Even in Dongxing City, she wasn't considered a genius. Her aptitude was only average. The only thing that attracted attention was her appearance. Although she was wearing ordinary clothes, she had a noble temperament, as if she had an extremely noble bloodline. How much are these 3 golden bamboos? Chu Fengmian walked to the stall and asked directly. Chapter 799. Chu Fengmian walked up to the stall and asked. Given her bloodline, she shouldn't have fallen into such dire straits. Obviously, there must be some other reasons. However, Chu Fengmian didn't care about her origin. His only goal was to get the 3 golden bamboo. You want to buy the 3 golden bamboo? The woman was surprised to hear Chu Fengmian's words. Even she didn't know the origin of the golden bamboo. She placed it here to try her luck. She didn't expect someone to buy it. Not bad. Name your price. I'll buy the 3 golden bamboo. Chu Fengmian nodded. 50, no, 100. 100 supreme grade spiritual stones. The woman's eyes flickered. She seemed to think for a while before she named a price. When she named the price, she also observed Chu Fengmian's expression. 100 supreme grade spiritual stones was already a sky-high price for her. Even for most saints, their net worth might not necessarily be that much. It was almost equivalent to the wealth of an ordinary saint. Seeing the slight change in Chu Fengmian's expression, the woman hurriedly explained. I don't know the origin of these 3 golden bamboo, but they're passed down from my ancestors. They must be valuable. However, the woman didn't know that Chu Fengmian's expression changed not because the price was too high, but because the price was too low. The pure gold bamboo was a rare treasure in the entire 9 regions. Although the pure gold bamboo couldn't be used to refine pills or forge weapons, it had a special ability. It could refine spiritual weapons. As long as an ordinary spiritual weapon was refined by the pure gold bamboo, its grade would more than double. The value of these 3 pure gold bamboos was probably equivalent to several royal grade spirit stones. The price of 100 top-grade spirit stones was simply too low. If not, 50 supreme grade spiritual stones. I'll sell them to you for 50 supreme grade spiritual stones. The woman hurriedly said when she saw Chu Fengmian's silence. No, just 100 supreme grade spiritual stones. I'll take the 3 golden bamboo. Chu Fengmian didn't want to waste time explaining. He flipped his palm, and 100 supreme grade spiritual stones appeared in his hand. He directly handed them over. Here, the woman was a little surprised. She didn't expect Chu Fengmian to be so straightforward. Just as she took the 100 top-grade spirit stones, a voice suddenly came from not far away. Ha! Suhi, why are you setting up a stall here? This young master has already said that as long as you marry me obediently, there will be no lack of riches and glory for you in the future. An arrogant voice rang out. Looking over, it was a young man swaggering over. The young man was not strong, only at the 3rd level of the Divine Sea Realm. However, there were 2 warriors following him closely. They were both at the 7th level of the Imperial Wind Realm. In this small East Ascension city, a martial artist at the 7th level of the Imperial Wind Realm was already considered a figure, but he was merely this man's guard. It could be seen that this man was extremely noble in Dongxing City. Surnamed Su, Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as if he was thinking about something. Not good. Senior, you should leave quickly. The woman named Su He, seeing the young man coming over, her face suddenly changed. She hurriedly said to Chu Fengmian. However, before Su He's voice died away, the young man had already come over. He glanced at Chu Fengmian. The moment he saw the top-grade spirit stones in Su He's hand, his eyes became much colder. Boy, who are you? What? Someone like you dares to steal this young master's woman? Chu Fumian glanced at the young man and didn't speak. Steal my woman? Chu Fumian only came for the golden bamboo, so he didn't want to waste his breath on these people. What's wrong, boy? Are you mute? Don't dare to speak? Seeing Chu Fumian's silence, the young man frowned and sneered arrogantly. Speak. I want to see who has the guts to have ideas about the woman this young master has taken a fancy to. Boy, did my young master talk to you? Can't you hear? A venerable warrior standing behind the young man suddenly stepped forward and shouted angrily at Chu Fumian. Get out! Chu Fumian curled up the corner of his mouth and spat out a word coldly. Senior you. Hearing Chu Fumian's words, Suhi's face suddenly changed. His voice trembled a little as he hurriedly spoke to Chu Fumian. Senior, this is the young city governor of Dongsheng City. You'd better apologize quickly. After saying that, Suhi hurriedly spoke to the young city governor. Young city governor, this senior is here to buy something from me. Please don't blame him. Don't blame him? A boy dares to be presumptuous in front of me? The young city governor looked at Chu Fumian and said coldly, I think you don't want to live anymore. Capture this man for me. I want to torture him. Yes. The two warriors behind the young city governor suddenly took action when they heard his order. Two arms directly grabbed Chu Fumian's shoulders. Courting death? Chu Fumian's eyes were extremely cold. With his current strength, he really didn't want to care about these juniors. However, since these people came to court death, Chu Fumian wouldn't consider it anymore. He could kill the disciples of the 7 major sects if he wanted to, let alone the young city governor of Dongsheng City. As soon as Chu Fumian's voice fell, his eyes suddenly swept over the two warriors. Suddenly, the two warriors' chests seemed to have been hit hard. They retreated countless times and spat out a big mouthful of blood. They fell to the ground on the spot and died. With just a glance, these two warriors couldn't bear it and died on the spot. What's going on? What happened? Those two people are the young city governor's guards? How'd they die? Many people in the surroundings heard the commotion and hurried over, only to see this unbelievable scene. Two warriors at the 7th level of the Imperial Wind Realm died, just like that. Chu Fumian even stood there and didn't make a move. You, what kind of demonic skill is this? The young city governor saw this scene, and his face changed greatly as he shouted loudly. How dare you kill this young master's bodyguard? This is Dongsheng City. Today, I won't let you leave Dongsheng City alive. The young city governor's face became extremely ferocious. He looked at Chu Fumian with eyes full of killing intent and said loudly, Come on, there's a demon here. Saints, quickly attack and slay this demon. Chapter 800. Quite a number of people in the surrounding crowd hurriedly retreated when they saw this scene. Each of their eyes revealed traces of fear. In East Ascension City, becoming an enemy of the young city lord was absolutely a dead end. His father was the city lord of East Ascension City, a figure who had already stepped into the divine power realm and became a saint. Many people looked at Chu Fumian as if they were looking at a dead man. No matter how strong he was, this was too reckless. Senior, you'd better leave quickly. Sui hurriedly advised. Although she didn't know Chu Fumian's strength, the East Ascension City Lord was a symbol of invincibility in her heart, especially when Chu Fumian was still young. Even if his aptitude was high, it would be difficult for him to compete with several saints in East Ascension City. Very good. I didn't expect to meet such a stupid person everywhere. Young City Lord, die for me. Chu Fumian's eyes were cold as he looked at the young City Lord. He coldly snorted and waved his hand directly at the young City Lord. This palm immediately locked onto the young City Lord. Even a peak life and death realm figure couldn't avoid his palm, let alone a mere divine sea realm young City Lord. How dare you? The young City Lord's face completely changed. He never thought that Chu Fumian would actually dare to kill him. In East Ascension City, the young City Lord had always been a high and mighty figure who was revered by everyone. Therefore, he recklessly provoked Chu Fumian. The young City Lord instinctively wanted to retreat, but it was useless. Chu Fumian's palm had already bombarded his body. His flesh and blood, and even his soul, were locked down by the power of this palm and shattered. Ah! Only the young city lord's miserable scream was left on the scene. These screams shocked all the warriors present. No one would have thought that the young city lord, who had always been arrogant and despotic, would actually die in the hands of Chu Fengyan. Even Su He, who was standing at the side, was stunned. She also didn't expect that Chu Fengyan didn't put the entire East Ascension City in his eyes and directly killed the young city lord. "Who is it? Who dares to kill my son? I'll kill you. Pay for my son's life." Rumble. All of a sudden, the surrounding space shattered as an elderly man walked out of the void. Tearing space. A saint. Dongsheng's city lord. Countless gazes looked over. The moment they looked at the old man, everyone's eyes were filled with awe. This old man was none other than the East Ascension City Lord, the strongest expert in the East Ascension City. Behind the old man, 3 more figures walked out. These 3 figures were all saints. They were the 3 consecrators of Dongsheng City. There were a total of 4 saints in Dongsheng City, and all of them had appeared. 1 at the 7th level of the Divine Force Realm, and 3 at the 3rd level of the Divine Force Realm. Chu Fengyan glanced at the 3 of them and took note of their cultivation levels. In Chu Fengyan's eyes, this kind of strength was nothing more than an ant. To the current Chu Fengyan, even life and death realm martial artists were nothing in his eyes, let alone a mere saint at the Divine Force Realm. "Brat, are you the one who dared to kill my son? I want you dead. Pay with your life." The East Ascension City Lord walked out of the void and looked at Chu Fengyan. Suddenly, he grabbed Chu Fengyan with his big hand and enveloped him. Great Capture Hand. The City Lord's Great Capture Hand is about to reach greater mastery. The consecrators beside the East Ascension City Lord spoke one after another. "I don't know where this brat came from. However, no one can be presumptuous in our East Ascension City. We must at least teach him a lesson." "Teach me a lesson? Your little East Ascension City? All of you get lost." "East Ascension City Lord? Very well. I'll let you accompany your son." Chu Fengyan looked at the East Ascension City Lord and revealed a mocking smile. Suddenly, an incomparably huge war dragon claw condensed in front of Chu Fengyan and grabbed at the East Ascension City Lord. The East Ascension City Lord's great grappling hand was instantly shattered by the war dragon's claw. At the same time, the East Ascension City Lord fell into Chu Fengyan's hands. What? Countless people saw this scene, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. The East Ascension City Lord, the #1 expert in East Ascension City, was caught in Chu Fengyan's hands like a little chick. He had almost no ability to resist. Die. Chu Fengyan's mind moved, and the power of the War Dragon Claw increased by a lot. In the palm of Chu Fengyan's hand, the East Ascension City Lord was directly crushed to death, leaving only a pool of blood on the ground. The 3 consecrators who were standing behind the East Ascension City Lord saw this scene, and their faces were incomparably pale. They hurriedly knelt before Chu Fengyan. "We were blind and did not know Senior's identity. Please forgive us." These 3 consecrators had prominent positions in East Ascension City and were respected by everyone. However, they were now kneeling before Chu Fengyan. Countless gazes looked at Chu Fengyan. Almost everyone's hearts were filled with disbelief as they looked at Chu Fengyan. How powerful was this person to be able to do all this? "All of you get lost. Don't appear in front of me again." Chu Fengyan coldly glanced at the 3 of them and snorted coldly. He was not in the mood to pay attention to these small fries in the Divine Power Realm. "Yes, thank you, Senior, for your forgiveness." When the 3 consecrators heard Chu Fengyan's words, they hurriedly kowtowed a few times. Then their figures moved, and they quickly left. Until the 3 consecrators left, many of the warriors present had yet to react, especially Su He, who was also in a daze. Su He greets Senior. "Because of my daughter, I have caused trouble for Senior. Please forgive me." So he looked at Chu Fengyan and hurriedly opened his mouth. Although Su He was not clear about Chu Fengyan's identity, a person who could casually kill the East Ascension City Lord was definitely not an ordinary person. In Sui's eyes, the East Ascension City Lord was a real big shot. The cities within 100 miles had to show some respect to the East Ascension City Lord. Even such a person had died in the hands of Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's identity was definitely more terrifying than he had imagined. These are 3 golden bamboos. Senior, please accept them. Also, please take back these spiritual stones. Sui hurriedly handed over the 3 golden bamboos. At the same time, he handed over the supreme spiritual stones to Chu Fengmian. If such a big shot could ask for good karma, it would definitely be more useful than any wealth. You are Suhi? Chu Fengmian did not take the 3 golden bamboos. Instead, he suddenly asked, "Where did you get these 3 golden bamboos?" Chapter 801. Suhi. His surname was Su. This name and the 3 golden bamboos reminded Chu Fengmian of an old acquaintance. Senior, these 3 golden bamboos are my daughter's family's ancestral items. They grew in my family's ancestral house. Later on, my family declined, and my ancestral house was occupied by others. Before my father left, he took the golden bamboos. So he said softly, "Family's ancestral house. Is there a river beside your family's ancestral house called Weapon River?" Chu Fengmian suddenly asked after hearing Suhi's words. "Yes, it is." Suhi raised his head and answered, "I didn't expect the heavenly soldier family, Su, to be reduced to such a state after 10,000 years. Chu Fengmian looked at Suhi and couldn't help but sigh. 10,000 years ago, the heavenly soldier family Su was so powerful that even the 7 great sects didn't dare to look down on it. They treated it as a distinguished guest. Because the heavenly soldier family, Su had the best forging technique in the world. Countless heavenly spirit weapons were forged by the heavenly soldier family Su. Therefore, it was called the heavenly soldier to forge heavenly weapons. At that time, the family Su's head had some friendship with Chu Fengmian. At that time, Chu Fengmian was a sword cultivator but didn't have any spiritual power. Ordinary heavenly spirit weapons required a certain amount of strength to be used. At that time, Chu Fengmian didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. He couldn't even use the most ordinary spirit weapons. That was why he paid a visit to the heavenly soldier Su family at that time. He wanted to forge a spiritual weapon that did not require spiritual energy to use. After various experiences, Chu Fengmian succeeded and obtained a spirit weapon that didn't require any spiritual power. Because of this, he formed a bond with the family Su. He didn't expect the powerful heavenly soldier family Su to be reduced to such a state. It was enough to make people sigh. The value of these 3 golden bamboos is far more than 100 supreme grade spirit stones. I can give you another chance. You can name a price. I won't take advantage of you. Chu Fengmian looked at Suhi and said slowly, "After all, they were the descendants of his old acquaintances. The value of these 3 bamboos was indeed far more than 100 top-grade spirit stones. The family Su had already declined, so Chu Fengmian would not choose to support her. However, Chu Fengmian was still willing to give her a fair deal. My daughter is willing to gift these 3 golden bamboos to a senior." So he looked at Chu Fengmian and was silent for a moment before he spoke again. "I only need senior's help." "Speak," Chu Fengmian said directly. "Senior, I want you to avenge my daughter. Although my family has declined, we used to be a noble family. However, we were exterminated by the Wang family. As long as you're willing to avenge my daughter and exterminate the Yang family, not only will I give you these 3 golden bamboos, I will also be willing to serve you as your slave." So he knelt in front of Chu Fengmian and said in a low voice. Although her voice was weak, it contained an extremely strong, killing intent. The enmity of the annihilation of his sect was irreconcilable. In the entire Su family, other than her, everyone else had died at the hands of the Wang family. Wang family? That Wang family? Chu Fengmian pondered for a moment, but he could not remember any Wang family. Chu Fengmian was reborn 10,000 years ago, so he was not familiar with the families that had risen in the past 10,000 years. Moreover, Chu Fengmian was not from the Western regions. He knew even less about the Western region's clans. The Wang family of the Azure River border city. The head of the Wang family is a duke of the Yin dynasty, Daoyuan Duke. So he explained, Daoyuan Duke. Chu Fengmian searched for this name in his mind and remembered. This Daoyuan duke was a duke of the Yin dynasty and was around the 5th level of the life and death realm. He was not considered a big figure among the dukes of the Yin dynasty. Azure River border city was just a small place. Su clan, I seem to owe him a favor back then. Since that's the case, I'll consider it as repaying the favor today. Chu Fengmian sighed and said to Suhi, "All right, a small Wang family. I will help you destroy them and avenge your family, Su. Many thanks, senior." Suhi saw that Chu Fengmian had agreed and revealed a joyful expression. She hurriedly handed over the golden bamboo and said, "Here are 3 golden bamboo. Please accept them. Aren't you afraid that I will leave?" Chu Fengmian accepted the 3 golden bamboo and said with a smile, "Senior, you must be joking. It's just 3 golden bamboo. It's good enough that they can enter your eyes." Suhi said with a smile, "Is that so? The people of the Heavenly Soldier family, Su, are indeed smart people." Chu Fengmian said casually and did not say anything else. Chu Fengmian had already explained the value of the 3 golden bamboo, and Suhi naturally knew it. Otherwise, she would not have taken the opportunity to ask Chu Fengmian to avenge her. Now, she hurriedly gave the 3 golden bamboo to Chu Fengmian in order to gain his favor. Thinking back to 10,000 years ago, when Chu Fengmian wanted to forge a spiritual weapon from the Heavenly Soldier family Su, he was also miserably cheated. However, now that he thought about it, it was all in the past. Chu Jianbai had already fallen. The Heavenly Soldier family, Su, had also declined to this point. "In that case, let's go. Take me to Azure River border city." Chu Fengmian waved his hand and said, "Yes." Suhi hurriedly packed up her things and left with Chu Fengmian. They entered the teleportation array. Azure River border city was not close to Dongxing City. After half a day, when the sky was about to fall, they had only traveled half the distance. Most of the journey was done through teleportation formations. The 9 regions were vast and boundless. Even with Chu Fengmian's strength, he could not travel to every corner of the western region. Along the way, Chu Fengmian was bored and chatted a lot with Suhi. "You're a member of the Heavenly Soldier family, Su? Why didn't you learn the art of forging?" Chu Fengmian observed Suhi and had some strange thoughts. The Heavenly Soldier family Su's strength was not because of their strength, but because of the art of forging. Although Suhi cultivated martial arts, she did not have any aptitude. It was not easy for her to reach the Divine Sea realm in her lifetime. However, if Suhi cultivated the art of forging, then with her bloodline of the Heavenly Soldier family Su, she would be able to quickly rise in the 9 regions. This, my family Su's art of forging, was lost thousands of years ago. Suhi pondered for a moment and said, "According to the ancient records, it seemed to have been taken away by others. As a result, our family Su gradually fell." Suhi also knew that the family Su was once prosperous and powerful. However, the current family Su was not even 1/10,000th of what it used to be. It was taken away by others. It seems that the people of the 7 great sects are still unwilling to give up. After taking away the sword principle, they want to take away the family Su's art of forging. Chu Fengmian could not help but sigh in his heart. The 7 great sects were powerful today because they had taken away the foundations of many families and sections. It seemed that the family Su did not escape the plunder of the 7 great sects. Chapter 802. The family Su's strongest point was their smithing technique. After losing the smithing technique, it was normal for the Heavenly Soldier family Su to decline. "Senior, do you have some relationship with my family Su's ancestor?" Suhi carefully asked Chu Fengmian. He was also a little surprised by Chu Fengmian's origin because many of the questions Chu Fengmian asked were from 10,000 years ago. If Suhi hadn't read the family Su's ancient books, he might not know these. However, Chu Fengmian looked like a young man in his 20s. He didn't look like an antique who had lived for 10,000 years. This made Suhi extremely curious about Chu Fengmian's identity, especially Chu Fengmian's strength, which was extremely powerful. "I do have some relationship with your family, Su, but you'd better not ask about my origin. Otherwise, the disaster you'll attract will be 1,000 times, no, 10,000 times more terrifying than the Wang family." Chu Fengmian said coldly. These words were not just to scare Suhi. With Chu Fengmian's current identity, it was nothing. However, if people knew that the current Chu Fengmian was Chu Jianbai from 10,000 years ago, the seven great sects would definitely try to capture Chu Fengmian at all costs. If Sui knew about Chu Fengmian's identity, it would only bring her disaster. Do you have any thoughts about learning smithing technique? Suddenly, Chu Fengmian asked Suhi, with your aptitude, you're not suitable to learn martial arts. You won't have any achievements in martial arts for the rest of your life. Smithing technique? Senior, you also know smithing technique? Suhi was stunned for a moment, then said with a joyful expression. She always knew that the family Su was at its strongest because of smithing technique. However, smithing technique wasn't easy to learn. It was a secret among all the great sects and aristocratic families. Sui's current identity was no different from a rogue cultivator. It was impossible for her to come into contact with smithing technique. That's right, I only know a little. Seeing that you're from the family Su, I'll let you inherit the smithing technique. Chu Fengmian said calmly. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian slapped Su-he's head with his palm. A wave of spiritual power bombarded Su-he's head. Su-he instinctively wanted to retreat and block, but this wave of spiritual power didn't hurt her at all. Instead, it directly drilled into Su-he's mind. Countless records about smithing art filled Su-he's mind. These are the forging techniques of your Su family. Back then, those old antiques didn't let me see them, so I had to secretly flip through them. Now, I can pass them all to you. It can be considered as an inheritance for your Su family. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sigh. His smithing technique was passed down from the Heavenly Soldier family Su. This was originally the family Su's secret. Back then, Chu Fengmian schemed with Qing Wuan for a long time and secretly sneaked into the family Su's Sutra Pavilion to learn the smithing technique. Now that he passed down the smithing technique to Su-he, it could be considered as returning the favor from back then. Our family Su's smithing technique. Su-he closed her eyes and confidently flipped through the countless records in her mind. Her expression gradually calmed down as she entered a state of comprehension. In the blink of an eye, she comprehended the true essence of the smithing technique. It was so fast that even Chu Fengmian was a little surprised. As expected of the Heavenly Soldier family Su's bloodline. Looks like the people from the family Su are all geniuses in smithing technique. If this goes on, Su-he will definitely be able to become a master of smithing in the future. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sigh. He wasn't in a hurry. He quietly waited by the side and set up a secret restriction around them so that others couldn't detect their existence. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. After a full 3 days, Sui's tightly shut eyes slowly opened. How's your learning coming along? Chu Fengmian directly asked when he saw Su-he open her eyes. 3 days flashed by for Chu Fengmian. He had obtained too many opportunities in the returning ruins heaven and had not had the time to carefully digest them. In particular, the swordsmanship he obtained from the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace and the swordsmanship recorded in the Supreme Sword Chi were extremely mysterious. Even now, they have been integrated into the Nine Realms swordsmanship. Chu Fengmian had to comprehend and accumulate his foundation again. However, to completely digest all these opportunities, it would take a long time, so Chu Fengmian wasn't in a hurry. I've just started. I still need time to try. So he slowly said. The art of forging seemed simple, but in reality, there were far fewer blacksmithing masters in the Nine Realms than there were alchemy masters. Therefore, every heaven-grade spiritual weapon was still a supreme treasure in the Nine Realms. Even in the Heavenly Soldier family Su, there were very few people who could refine heaven-grade spiritual weapons. They were considered geniuses in the family Su and were people who would be heavily nurtured. This was enough to show how difficult it was to learn the art of forging and the art of forging. Sui had just started learning the art of forging in 3 days, which was already beyond Chu Fengmian's imagination. There's no hurry. Don't you want to destroy the Wang family? After that, you'll have plenty of time to cultivate the art of forging. Chu Fengmian casually said, Let's go. Bring me to Green River Border City. Yes. Su-he hurriedly nodded and respectfully led Chu Fengmian forward. Another half a day passed. After passing through countless teleportation arrays, Chu Fengmian and Su He finally arrived at a riverside. In front of them was an incomparably huge city built by the Green River. It was the Wang family's Green River border city. This Green River border city was much bigger than the East Ascension city they had passed by before. Chu Fengmian could already sense that there were a total of 3 life and death realm martial artists in the Green River border city. 2 of them were at the 2nd layer, and 1 was at the 5th layer. The 5th layer life and death realm martial artist should be the Wang family head that Su He had mentioned, Master Dayuan. Senior, this Master Dayuan is a life and death realm martial artist. You have to be careful. Arriving outside the Green River border city, Su He couldn't help but remind Chu Fengmian, don't worry, life and death realm martial artists are just like ants. Even life and death realm martial artists are nothing. Chu Fengmian casually said, don't worry, it's just a mere Wang family. Since I promised you, I'll naturally exterminate them. Life and death realm? Ants? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Su He was stunned. Life and death realm martial artists were existences that surpassed saints. In the Yin dynasty, their status was extremely high, enough to be conferred the title of Duke. But now, in Chu Fengmian's words, they were actually so unbearable. While Su He was still in shock, Chu Fengmian was already standing in the air before the Green River border city. Chapter 803. In front of Chu Fengmian was the defensive array of Azure River border city. People of the Wang family, get out here, Chu Fengmian coldly shouted. Suddenly, he blasted out a palm. All of a sudden, the protective formation of the Azure River border city was completely shattered. Immediately, surging spiritual energy engulfed the entire Azure River border city. Countless martial artists in the city couldn't help but raise their heads. What's going on? Someone is attacking Azure River border city? Some martial artists raised their heads and saw the defensive array being shattered with a single palm. What kind of power is this? Su He's face couldn't help but change upon seeing this scene. Destroying the Wang family might not be difficult for some powerhouses, but the defensive array of Green River border city had been reinforced by generations of family clans in Green River border city. It could be said that even peak life and death realm experts would find it hard to break through the barrier. It had always been the backing of Azure River border city. But now, this defensive array was actually so fragile in front of Chu Fengmian, shattering it with a single palm. Shattering the defensive array with a single palm was simply an absolute provocation to the entire Azure River border city and the city lord of Azure River border city, the Wang family. Chu Fengmian stood in the air above Azure River border city with his hands behind his back, coldly sweeping his gaze below. In the heart of Azure River border city was an incomparably huge courtyard. In front of the courtyard's gate, a large Wang character could be clearly seen. This was the Wang family, the city lord of Azure River border city. 2 figures suddenly scuttled out from within the Wang family. Their faces were filled with extreme fury as they furiously roared. Who are you? How dare you act so presumptuously in Azure River border city? It's the 2 supreme elders. The 2 supreme elders of the Wang family have made their move. Seeing the appearance of these 2 figures, many martial artists below cried out in alarm. These 2 figures were 2 white-haired old men. Although they were old, their auras were extremely powerful. They were the 2 supreme elders of the family Su. Kid, who are you? Why are you invading my Azure River border city? How dare you go against my Wang clan? One of the supreme elders looked at Chu Fengmian. When he saw Chu Fengmian's unfamiliar face, he was slightly taken aback. Then, he swept his gaze over him. His gaze suddenly landed on Su He, who was standing outside Qing's city. She's actually the trash from the family. Su, you dare to come to our Azure River border city? Back then, it was our Wang clan's mistake to accidentally let you go. Since you've come this time, then obediently die. Go accompany your family, Su's useless ancestors. All of a sudden, the Supreme Elder made a move. His hand formed a claw as he swiped at Su He. Die! This Grand Elder was a life and death expert, while Su He was only at the body refining realm. Under this claw, Su He stood where she was, unable to move, even a single muscle. She could only watch helplessly as the claw suddenly grabbed at her. However, at the moment when his claw was about to reach Su-hee's body, an incomparably huge dragon claw suddenly swept over. Suddenly, the Wong clan's Grand Elder's left hand was shattered by a dragon claw. It was not only his claw, even the Grand Elder's left arm was shattered. "Who are you? Are you the helper that the family Su's Jr. asked for?" Seeing Chu Fengyan suddenly make a move and shatter his left hand with a single move, the Wong family's Grand Elder's expression changed as he coldly spoke. "Although I don't know how much this junior has given you, our Wong clan is willing to double the price. As long as you don't interfere in today's matter, our Wong clan is willing to treat you as a distinguished guest. How about it? Treat me as a distinguished guest? A puny Wong clan? You're from the Wong clan? If that's the case, then kneel." Chu Fengyan coldly snorted disdainfully. With his current strength, even in the Yin dynasty, he would be treated as a distinguished guest. How could this puny Wong clan try to rope him in? At the same time, Chu Fengyan's voice faded. The battle dragon's claw was already smashing towards the Grand Elder. The incomparably huge pressure completely shattered the spiritual energy that the Grand Elder had condensed. Then, under this palm, he was directly bombarded to the ground, kneeling in front of Su-hee. This casual palm directly suppressed a life and death realm Great Elder of the Wong clan, forcing him to kneel on the ground. This scene stimulated the hearts of who knows how many martial artists present. Too terrifying. Who is this person? How can he have such terrifying strength? Family Su. Could it be that the family Su of the past was hiding such a terrifying expert? In the western region, the news of family Su's annihilation by the Wong clan had spread far and wide. Everyone had heard of the powerful family Su of the past. The annihilation of such a 10,000-year-old family had caused many people to sigh. But now, Chu Fengyan had come with Su-hee to take revenge for family Su's annihilation. "Little bastard, you dare to make me kneel? Damn it, I'll make you die without a burial place." This Great Elder was bombarded to the ground by Chu Fengyan's palm. Kneeling, his face was filled with extreme anger as he opened his mouth to curse. The other Great Elder of the Wong clan also looked at Chu Fengyan with a cold gaze and said, "Sire, where it's possible to let people off, one should be lenient. Even if you're stronger, a powerful dragon cannot suppress a local snake. This is Azure River Border City. Do you really want to be enemies with our Wong clan? Quickly stop now. This is your best choice. For the sake of a ruined family Su, you forcefully provoked our Wong clan. Our Wong clan isn't a pushover. Please reconsider." This Great Elder didn't directly attack. Instead, he secretly opened a sound transmission jade talisman while conversing with Chu Fengyan. Clearly, he was calling for the strongest expert of the Wong clan, Master Daoyuan, to come. All of this was seen by Chu Fengyan. However, Chu Fengyan's expression was still disdainful and cold. Provoke the Wong clan? Chu Fengyan didn't put the 7 major sects in his eyes. What could this small Wong family amount to? Su-hee. Chu Fengyan suddenly turned around and looked at Su-hee. With a wave of his hand, the ancestral dragon's supreme sword suddenly flew out and flew in front of Su-hee. "Pick up the sword and kill this person. I want you to take revenge with your own hands." Chu Fengyan pointed at the Great Elder of the Wong clan kneeling on the ground and said coldly, "Bastard, don't you dare insult me." The Great Elder of the Wong clan was furious after hearing Chu Fengyan's words. If he died in Chu Fengyan's hands, he could only say that his skills were inferior. However, to die in the hands of a body refinement realm martial artist was simply an insult to him. "Shut up." Chu Fengyan waved his hand, and the Great Elder of the Wong clan's tongue was directly crushed by a surge of spiritual energy. His mouth was filled with blood, and he couldn't speak anymore. Chapter 804. The Grand Elder of the Wong clan was a life and death expert. To him, even if his tongue was crushed, he would be able to recover in an instant. But now, his tongue was covered by Chu Fengyan's spiritual power. If his tongue was not stimulated and reassembled, it would be crushed again. Such a life and death realm martial artist was like a toy in Chu Fengmian's hands and could be easily manipulated. This made the countless martial artists present jump in fright. Damn it, kid, I'm going to kill you. Do you think you're not human? You're a demon. The family Su's people are actually in cahoots with a demon like you. Just you wait. The experts of our Yin dynasty will definitely not let you off. The other grand elder of the Wang family couldn't hold himself back any longer. Seeing their Wang family's people kneeling on the ground in Chu Fengmian's hands was simply an insult to their entire family. What? You kneel too? Chu Fengmian saw the other Wang family supreme elder make a move, and the corner of his mouth revealed an indifferent sneer. A martial artist with such strength would not be placed in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Now that he dared to sneak attack Chu Fengmian, he was simply courting death. As Chu Fengmian spoke, he waved his hand and a huge spiritual power swept over. The Wang family supreme elder was immediately suppressed and directly knelt on the ground. The two Wang family supreme elders were now easily defeated by Chu Fengmian and were kneeling on the ground. This scene simply pierced the hearts of the martial artists present. In their hearts, these Wang family supreme elders were almost invincible figures. No one would have thought that they would be defeated so miserably by a young man like Chu Fengmian. Kill. Don't you want to avenge the family, Su? I'll give you a chance to kill them with your own hands. Chu Fengmian looked at Su He and said coldly, "Little bastard, how dare you?" The two supreme elders of the Wang family rushed towards Su He at the same time, and a wave of pressure enveloped him. However, this wave of pressure was unable to break through Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy. Su He wielded the ancestral dragon supreme sword and pulled it out. Sword light flashed. Two heads fell to the ground. The two grand elders of the Wang family were killed by Su He with a single slash of her sword. Boom! At this moment, the crowd was boiling with excitement. Once upon a time, the Wang clan was able to cover the sky with one hand in Qinghe border city. However, these two grand elders were now so easily killed by Chu Fengmian. Whoosh! Whoosh! Suddenly, countless figures rushed out from the Wang family. They were all saints of the Wang family, and there were more than a dozen of them. In a western region, a clan that could have more than a dozen saints could not be considered a small clan. The moment these saints came out, they witnessed Su He killing the two Wang clan great elders with their own eyes. Supreme elders! Many Wang clan saints cried out in alarm. Damn it! Who is it? How dare you kill people of my Wang family? Su He, I let you escape back then, but I didn't expect you to become a scourge. If I had known this would happen, I would have killed you back then. Suddenly, a loud roar came from the sky. The space in front of him was torn apart, and a figure slowly walked out from it. This figure was none other than the Wang family head, Master Dao Yuan. His cultivation of the 5th level of the life and death realm was fully displayed. The moment he looked at Chu Fengmian, his gaze was extremely cold. Kid, I don't know where you came from, but since you dare to make an enemy out of our Wang family, you are courting death. No one can escape from our Wang family unscathed. Master Dao Yuan looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly, "Set up the formation and capture this person." Yes, the dozen Wang clan saints and the Wang family disciples who were standing at the side suddenly unleashed all of their spiritual energy. Countless spiritual energies intertwined around Chu Fengmian and formed a huge formation, trapping Chu Fengmian in it. Every single spiritual energy rope contained an extreme amount of spiritual energy. The slightest touch could cause one to fall into eternal damnation. This was clearly a profound formation of the Wang family. It was the trump card of the Wang family. It seems like there are quite a lot of people who don't know what's good for them. You want to trap me with this little formation? Chu Fengmian had been waiting for the formation to complete. Only then did a mocking smile appear on his face. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian waved his hand. Countless dragon roars suddenly resounded from his body. Under these dragon roars, an incomparably huge war dragon claw suddenly condensed. The moment the war dragon claw condensed, the surrounding formation was instantly swept away. Not a single strand of spiritual energy remained. In an instant, they were all swept away. How is this possible? Master Dao Yuan's face changed drastically when he saw this scene. Even a peak life and death realm martial artist would find it difficult to escape from the Wang family's formation, let alone break it by force. But now, in front of Chu Fengyan, the Wang family's formation appeared to be extremely fragile. At the same time, the War Dragon Claw had already reached out to grab Master Dao Yuan. The speed of the claw was extremely fast. The spiritual energy that Master Dao Yuan had gathered around him was instantly destroyed. Master Dao Yuan? In some small places, you're indeed worthy of being called a powerhouse. But unfortunately, you still provoke someone you shouldn't have. Today, your Wang family will be destroyed. Chu Fengyan's War Dragon Claw moved. Master Dao Yuan's body was immediately caught in Chu Fengyan's palm. At the same time, the violent spiritual energy of the War Dragon Claw had already killed the surrounding Wang family disciples one by one. They all turned into clouds of blood mist and died on the spot. More than a dozen Wang family saints had all fallen in an instant. More than a dozen saints and 2 life and death realm supreme elders had all fallen. Even the Wang family patriarch, Master Dao Yuan, was now in Chu Fengyan's hands. All this meant that from today onwards, the Wang family was truly finished. The War Dragon Claw directly caught Master Dao Yuan's body. A series of miserable screams immediately rang out. Chapter 805. In the air, Master Dao Yuan's body was tightly gripped by the War Dragon's claw. He couldn't even struggle a little. Under the immense pressure, Master Dao Yuan's body shattered bit by bit as he screamed in agony. Master Dao Yuan. In the End Empire, he was considered a famous expert. But now, he had fallen into Chu Fengyan's hands like an ant. Chu Fengyan could easily defeat him and even toy with him. How is this possible? Kid, you dare to kill me? I'm from the Yin Dynasty. If you kill me, the Yin Dynasty won't let you go. Master Dao Yuan roared loudly. However, Chu Fengyan's face was calm. He didn't even take Master Dao Yuan's words seriously as he continued to speak. Suhi, I'll leave Master Dao Yuan's life to you. As for the rest of the Wang family, it's time for them to perish. With a wave of Chu Fengyan's hand, Master Dao Yuan's spiritual energy was completely sealed. Then, Chu Fengyan threw him in front of Su He and made him kneel before her. Let me go. As long as you let me go, I'm willing to serve you for the rest of my life. Master Dao Yuan looked at Su He, who was holding the ancestral dragon's supreme sword, and loudly begged for mercy. He no longer had the dignity of a life and death realm expert. In order to survive, he didn't hesitate to beg for mercy from Su He. He could already see that Chu Fengyan was here to avenge his family's Su. Only by begging Su He could he have a chance to live. Master Dao Yuan's aptitude wasn't high. Because of this, he had to go through untold hardships to survive the life and death tribulation. Now that he had cultivated to this level, he didn't want to die. However, Su He's expression didn't change. It was incomparably cold. The sword in her hand flashed, and Master Dao Yuan's head was directly chopped off. The Wang family head fell just like that. Good. Seeing Su He's action, Chu Fengyan laughed loudly. This Su He was indeed a member of the family Su. He killed decisively. Regardless of whether one wanted to become a martial artist, an alchemy master, or a weapon refining grandmaster, one needed to have a resolute and perseverance. Since that's the case, I'll take care of the rest. Chu Fengyan gathered the spiritual energy in his body. Suddenly, it gradually condensed in the air and turned into a huge spiritual sword that was at least 10,000 meters long. Boom! At the moment when the power of this huge spiritual sword was condensed to the extreme, the entire palace and courtyard of the Wang family was suddenly swept away by a ray of sword energy. None of the Wang family's disciples were able to leave this place alive. They had all died under Chu Fengyan's sword. There aren't many treasures in the Wang family after all. However, the more wealth there is, the better. Take it all out. Chu Fengyan stood in the air above the ruins of the Wang clan. His gaze swept across the area, and he immediately saw a treasury hidden under the ruins. The treasury was covered with restrictions. It seemed that only important figures of the Wang family would be able to open it. However, for Chu Fengyan, these small restrictions were nothing. He had easily destroyed the Wang family, let alone these restrictions. Chu Fengyan waved his hand. The moment a ray of spiritual energy blasted down, the restrictions on the treasury were all shattered in an instant. It opened immediately. Chu Fengyan saw the mountainous pile of spirit stones with a single glance. Collect them all. Chu Fengyan didn't waste any time. He immediately gathered a ray of spiritual energy and collected all the spiritual stones in the treasury into his spatial ring. Even a mosquito's meat was meat. After all, this treasury was the accumulation of the Wang family for countless years. Although it was definitely not as good as the treasures that Chu Fengyan had obtained from the ruins of Ind, it was still a decent harvest. After collecting all the wealth, Chu Fengyan left. The only thing left of the Wang family was the ruins and the ground full of blood sacrifices. From today onwards, the Wang family was no more. After doing all this, Chu Fengyan turned into a ray of light and left with Su He. In a mountain range a few hundred miles away from the Azure River border city, Chu Fengyan suddenly slashed down with his sword and split the mountain range into two. From the center of the mountain range, a cave was directly opened. In this mountain range, there was an extremely special spiritual spring. Chu Fengyan needed some time to completely master the Nine Realms sword technique. When Chu Fengyan attacked to destroy the Wang family, he felt that his Nine Realm sword technique was created by taking the essence of all the sword techniques in the world. It could be said that the countless sword techniques had their own merits and were extremely messy. Chu Fengyan had to simplify the complicated. If he was too careless, it was very likely that he would go berserk on the spot. At that time, he would lose all his spiritual energy. At worst, he would die on the spot. Chu Fengyan did not want to end up like that. So he hurriedly found a cave to comprehend the Nine Realms sword technique and understand its true essence. These materials are all excellent refining materials. During this period of time, use these materials to refine weapons. Without my permission, do not disturb me. Chu Fengyan took out a lot of materials from the empty ring and directly threw them all to Su He. Yes. Su He respectfully sat outside, picked up the refining materials, and began to refine. Now that Chu Fengyan had avenged the death of the Su family for her, Su He was now extremely respectful to Chu Fengyan. He treated any word of Chu Fengyan as a supreme order and obeyed it. After doing all this, Chu Fengyan sat in the depths of the cave and set up countless restrictions. Only then did he wholeheartedly immerse himself in comprehending the Nine Realms sword technique. Waves of swordsmanship gradually spread out from Chu Fengyan's body and constantly appeared in front of him. There were tens of thousands of sword techniques. There were sword techniques from the ancient era, and there were sword techniques from the current era. There were also sword techniques of unknown origin. These sword techniques each had their own strengths and weaknesses. They restrained each other and were incompatible like fire and water. However, among the countless sword techniques, there was only one that was the most dazzling. It seemed to be a sword technique created by gathering the strengths of tens of thousands of sword techniques. Nine Realms sword technique, encompassing the Nine Realms. The world's sword technique, the unique and righteous. Chu Fengyan closed his eyes, and the sword essence on his body became sharper. In Chu Fengyan's mind, the image of an ancient book suddenly condensed. Every page in this ancient book recorded a different sword technique. There were tens of thousands of ancient books, and there were only 2 words on this ancient book, Nine Realms. Chapter 806. This ancient book was the condensation of countless swordsmanship in Chu Fengyan's mind. Every page of this ancient book recorded the exquisite swordsmanship of ancient times. If this ancient book was taken out, it would definitely be a treasure that countless experts in the 9 regions would fight for. Even the 7 major sects would fight for it. However, this ancient book gradually became thinner and thinner in Chu Fengyan's mind. Only the essence of the countless swordsmanship recorded in it was left. The rest of the impurities were directly refined by Chu Fengyan. Under the sweep of Chu Fengyan's consciousness, this swordsmanship was constantly condensed and gradually turned into a single sword technique. This swordsmanship was reborn from this ancient book and was much more powerful than any of the previous swordsmanship recorded in the ancient book. Chu Fengyan closed his eyes and rested. Time passed day by day. Every minute and every second, Chu Fengyan was refining the 9 regions swordsmanship and constantly condensing it. Although the ancient book in Chu Fengyan's mind was constantly shrinking, the exquisiteness of the swordsmanship had reached a completely different level. I didn't expect that it would take me a week to completely comprehend this swordsmanship. In the cave, Chu Fengyan slowly opened his eyes. It had been a week since he started cultivating. During this week, Chu Fengyan finally condensed the 9 regions swordsmanship completely. It was extremely risky for him to create his own swordsmanship. It could be said that one wrong step would lead to a tragic end. Fortunately, Chu Fengyan discovered that something was wrong in advance. Now, he had properly removed the impurities of the swordsmanship and integrated the countless swordsmanship into one. Otherwise, many of these swordsmanship's strengths would restrain each other. A mountain could not accommodate 2 tigers. In Chu Fengyan's body, it was very likely that the power of countless swordsmanship would explode at the same time. It could be said that it was extremely dangerous. Fortunately, Chu Fengyan was able to deal with it calmly and eliminate these dangers. However, this also reminded Chu Fengyan that if he wanted to condense the 9 regions swordsmanship, he had to be careful at every step. Boom! Just as Chu Fengyan gradually calmed down the sword essence in his body, a wave of spiritual energy suddenly came from outside. Oh, so he had actually succeeded in cultivating it? I wonder what kind of spirit artifacts she has forged are like. The refining technique that Chu Fengyan gave Su He was, in fact, the assessment technique used by the Heavenly Soldier family Su to assess the aptitude of the family Su's disciples. Using this artifact forging technique, the first spirit artifact that was forged represented their artifact forging aptitude. To be able to refine a yellow grade spirit tool, one could be considered to have some aptitude for refining tools among the family Su's disciples and could be nurtured. If one was able to refine a black grade spirit tool, one could be considered a genius in refining tools and was worthy of being nurtured by the family Su. As for the earth grade and heaven grade, they were rare geniuses in the family Su for thousands of years. They might even inherit the position of the family Su's head. Now, this Su He was actually able to refine it. At the very least, this proved that her aptitude wasn't bad. Let's go take a look. Chu Fengyan got up and destroyed the countless restrictions in the cave. He was not in a hurry as he slowly walked out and saw Su He at a glance. Su He's forehead was covered with bean-sized beads of sweat, and her face was full of fatigue. This time, refining tools took 7 days. For Chu Fengyan, refining tools for 7 days without rest was nothing. However, Su He was only in the body refining realm. In these 7 days, she had used up all of her strength. Take it. Chu Fengyan came out and saw Su He's appearance. His mind moved as he took out a few elixirs from his spatial ring and gave them to Su He. Yes. Seeing Chu Fengyan come out, Su He originally wanted to get up and greet him. However, her body was incomparably weak. She could only accept the elixirs and swallow them. Her tired face gradually returned to normal. In the blink of an eye, she had completely recovered. At the same time, the spiritual energy of the elixir did not dissipate. It suddenly condensed in Su He's body. Boom! A surge of spiritual energy fluctuation. Countless spiritual energy burst out from Su He's body. Her cultivation level reached the divine sea realm in an instant. This made Su He's eyes filled with disbelief. Her cultivation level was only in the 8th level of the body refining realm. Now, after swallowing this elixir, she broke through to the divine sea realm. Moreover, the spiritual energy of this elixir was gentle and long. It was not something that ordinary elixirs could compare to. Many elixirs could achieve this, but the medicinal strength was extremely overbearing. If 10 people swallowed it, 9 of them would die. Only one could successfully survive. However, the elixir given by Chu Fengyan could be swallowed by almost anyone. Senior, thank you for giving me this elixir. I will definitely repay you in the future. Sui stood up and expressed her gratitude to him. No worries. It's just a heaven-grade elixir. It's nothing to worry about. Where is the spiritual weapon that you refined? Let me have a look. Chu Fengmian smiled casually and said, for the current Chu Fengmian, an ordinary heaven-grade elixir was nothing. Chu Fengmian had obtained more than 10,000 heaven-grade elixirs from the returning ruined sky. Most of the elixirs were meaningless to Chu Fengmian. Taking out this one was indeed nothing to Chu Fengmian. A heaven-grade elixir. Sui had also guessed that the grade of the elixir would not be low. However, she did not expect it to be a heaven-grade elixir. A heaven-grade elixir that countless saints could not wait to fight for was now given to her by Chu Fengmian. Moreover, Chu Fengmian seemed to be playing it down. Who exactly is this person? My family Su ancestor actually knew this person? Sui could not help but sigh in her heart. It was definitely her great fortune to have met Chu Fengmian. However, Sui quickly reacted. She picked up a spiritual sword beside her and handed it to Chu Fengmian. This is the spiritual weapon that my daughter refined. Top Earth grade? The moment Chu Fengmian received the spiritual sword, he roughly sensed the grade of the spiritual sword. The first spiritual weapon that Sui had refined had already reached the level of top Earth grade. The overall appearance of the spiritual weapon was not bad, but the details were a little rough. However, this was already beyond Chu Fengmian's imagination. Such aptitude could be considered a peerless genius in the Heavenly Soldier family Su. Chapter 807. Not bad. With such aptitude, perhaps you can really recreate the glory of the Heavenly Soldier family Su. Chu Fengmian looked at Su He and said with a smile. He had a good relationship with the former Heavenly Soldier family Su. Now, the decline of the Heavenly Soldier family Su made Chu Fengmian sigh. However, Su He's aptitude was extremely outstanding among the Heavenly Soldier family Su generations. Let's go. I'll take you to a place. Chu Fengmian looked at Su He with flickering eyes. He suddenly thought of something and said, yes. Su He stood up and hurriedly packed her things, preparing to leave. Su did not question Chu Fengmian's words and carried it out. If Chu Fengmian wanted to harm her, he would have killed her countless times. Moreover, with Chu Fengmian's current strength, killing her was as easy as killing an ant. However, Chu Fengmian imparted the art of forging to her. Becoming a master blacksmith was definitely more powerful than cultivating martial arts. She did not need to question Chu Fengmian's words. The two left the cave and flew in a certain direction. Along the way, Chu Fengmian walked and stopped, as if he was looking for something. Gradually, many barren mountains appeared in the surroundings. Among the mountains, not a single person could be seen. It was extremely barren. No cultivator would be willing to set foot in this place. Gradually, at the end of the mountains, there was a mountain peak shrouded in mist. The moment Chu Fengmian and Su He stepped into it, the surrounding space suddenly changed. The sky and earth spun, and a white mist appeared in front of them. The mist was bottomless. At a glance, they could not see what was behind the mist. Senior, where are we? Sui looked around and could not help but look at Chu Fengmian. This mountain peak was obviously very strange. The two of them walked in the white mist, but they seemed to be walking in the same place. It was as if they had come to a maze-like place. This made Su He curious as to why Chu Fengmian would bring her to such a place. This was a sacred place of the Heavenly Soldier family Su back then. Although the family Su was destroyed, this place should still be left behind. Chu Fengmian said without raising his head. His eyes were still scanning the surroundings as if he was searching for something. A sacred place of our family, Su? Sui stared blankly at the endless white fog in front of him, and before he could speak again, all of a sudden, Chu Fengmian gathered his spiritual energy and struck out with his palm. The surrounding white mist was dispersed by his palm. A large bronze door suddenly appeared in front of the two of them. This bronze door gave off an extremely ancient aura. It was at least 10,000 years old, and it was likely that no one had opened it before. Drip your blood on the door. Chu Fengmian looked at Su He and said, yes. Sui nodded and walked forward. Using his spiritual energy, He made a cut on his finger. A drop of blood landed on the bronze door with a flick of Su-hee's finger. Rumble! With this drop of blood, countless ancient runes suddenly condensed on the bronze door. The power contained within them was something that even Chu Fengyan could not break. This bronze door was the masterpiece of the heavenly soldier family Su. It was much more powerful than a heavenly-level spiritual artifact. Even those who transcended life and death could not break it. Unless it was a disciple of the family Su, no one could open this bronze door and enter. Kacha! Kacha! Under the condensation of the countless runes, the bronze door slowly opened. Chu Fengyan and Su-hee stepped into it. After entering, Chu Fengyan saw that behind the bronze door was an incomparably huge courtyard. There were more than 100 palaces in the courtyard. In the largest palace, bursts of earth fire suddenly gushed out. Above the earth fire was a huge furnace that was as tall as 10 people. The earth fire gushing out from the ground was absorbed by the huge furnace. There were a total of 9 incomparably huge dragon heads carved on the furnace. Each of the dragon heads was lifelike and looked no different from a real dragon head. The 9-dragon cauldron. This treasure is indeed here. It hasn't been taken by the people of the 7 major sects. Chu Fengyan couldn't help but sigh when he saw the 9-dragon cauldron. The 9-dragon cauldron was the most precious treasure of the heavenly soldier family Su. Although it was not an extreme immortal weapon, its value was not inferior to an extreme immortal weapon. This was because most of the famous spiritual weapons refined by the heavenly soldier family Su came from the 9-dragon cauldron. The 3 most important points in refining spiritual weapons were the materials used, the blacksmith master who refined them, and the furnace used to refine them. The 9-dragon cauldron was definitely the most perfect furnace for refining spiritual weapons. Without the 9-dragon cauldron, the heavenly soldier family Su would no longer be the heavenly soldier family Su. For example, although the 7 major sects had destroyed the heavenly soldier family Su and obtained the refining techniques, they had not created a second heavenly soldier family Su in the entire 9 regions. What they lacked was the 9-dragon cauldron. This is the sacred land of the family Su. Su-hee looked at everything around her, her eyes filled with shock. These hundreds of palaces were even more prosperous than the Wang family Su-hee had met before. In particular, the warehouses were filled with refining materials. This kind of wealth was terrifying to the extreme. Yes, this is one of the sacred lands of the family Su. Chu Fengyan looked at Su-hee's shocked expression and could not help but sigh. Although Su-hee was a descendant of the family Su, he did not know how prosperous the family Su was back then. It was definitely much more prosperous than anyone could imagine. Back then, the Su clan had dozens of sacred grounds of various sizes. In fact, some of them were even larger and more prosperous than the Su clan. However, those sacred lands had probably been taken by the 7 major sects and would not be left behind. Only this one sacred place was unknown to most of the family Su's disciples at that time. Chu Fengyan had discovered it secretly. Otherwise, he would not have known that the family Su had such a sacred place. Here, you can properly practice your refining skills. There are almost inexhaustible materials here. You can use them as you wish. Chu Fengyan looked at Su-hee and said, "This way, I can leave with peace of mind." Chapter 808. What? Senior, you're leaving? Su-hee was shocked by Chu Fengyan's words. She didn't expect that Chu Fengyan would say that he was leaving. That's right. Chu Fengyan nodded. He couldn't stay here forever. Chu Fengyan still had to face many things, including the 7 major sects and the Northern Mang Academy. Chu Fengyan couldn't abandon all of them. Meeting an old friend made Chu Fengyan extremely happy, but Chu Fengyan still had to leave. Now that he had brought Su-hee to this sacred ground and imparted the art of weapon crafting to her, it could be said that Su-hee would be able to sit back and relax. There would be no danger at all, and he could let her cultivate the art of weapon crafting properly. All of this was enough. You can cultivate the blacksmithing Tao here, and you can also make a breakthrough. The family Su has declined, but I hope that the family Su can rise again because of you. Chu Fengyan's figure moved and disappeared from the courtyard. Only a pile of elixirs and spiritual stones were left at his feet. These were enough to support Su-he's cultivation. The materials in the courtyard's warehouse were also enough for Su-he's cultivation. What he had done was enough. As for where Su-he could go, it would all depend on her own luck. It wasn't until Chu Fengmian left that Su-he gradually regained her senses. She also knew that Chu Fengmian had his own things to do, and he couldn't stay here forever. She, Su-he, could only cultivate until she became a blacksmith grandmaster. Only then would she be qualified to follow in Chu Fengmian's footsteps. The family Su hasn't sent anyone here for a long time. Child, come here. The nine-dragon cauldron in the palace slowly opened its mouth and called Su-he over. The bronze gate closed once again after Chu Fengmian left. Outside, no one could imagine that there was another world in the white mist. After leaving the family Su Holy Land, Chu Fengmian did not hesitate to head to the nearest city. He used the teleportation formation to leave and return to the Beimeng Academy. For Chu Fengmian, the Beimeng Academy wasn't of much use to him. However, the Beimeng Academy was the legacy of his eldest senior brother and his master, Xianbei Saint, who was also in the Beimeng Academy. Chu Fengmian naturally had to return to Beimeng Academy. It took a total of 10 days. Chu Fengmian returned to the Northern Mang Academy through the teleportation formation and headed to the Northern Mang Sacred Region, his Sword Comprehension Peak. After the Sword Chi around Sword Comprehension Peak sensed Chu Fengmian's aura, it pushed aside and opened up a path for Chu Fengmian to enter. Who is it? The Sword Comprehension Peak's Sword Chi actually opened? The changes on Sword Comprehension Peak naturally could not escape the eyes of countless Northern Mang Sacred Region disciples. Many of these Northern Mang Sacred Region disciples were itching to enter Sword Comprehension Peak. Sword Comprehension Peak. Among the countless peaks in Northern Mang Sanctuary, it was considered to be the peak with the densest spiritual chi. Cultivating on it was simply a matter of leaps and bounds. Yi Tianjun had once obtained Sword Comprehension Peak, and these people did not dare to pry into it. However, after Chu Fengmian destroyed the Saint Party, many people began to have thoughts about it. After all, everyone in the Beimeng Academy knew about Yi Tianjuan's power, and no one dared to challenge his majesty. Although Chu Fengmian was now powerful and ranked first on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region, in the hearts of countless disciples, he still could not be compared to Yi Tianjuan's deterrence. However, the Sword Chi around Sword Comprehension Peak was still there. Some of the Northern Mang Sacred Region's disciples were destroyed by the Sword Chi the moment they tried to get close to it. If it were not for the help of an old antique from Northern Mang Sacred Region who had transcended life and death, they would have died. Chu Fengmian is back. Seeing the changes on Sword Comprehension Peak, many disciples of Northern Mang Sacred Region knew that there was only one possibility. Chu Fengmian was back. Only Chu Fengmian's return could cause such changes on Sword Comprehension Peak. Chu Fengmian actually dares to come back. I thought he was going to die in the returning ruined sky. I didn't expect him to come back. A former disciple of the Saint Party saw Chu Fengmian's return and his eyes flashed coldly. Damn it, this person's strength is even stronger than before. He's not easy to deal with. Han Yueli, who was with him, did not seem to come back. He might have died in the returning ruined sky. Some disciples of Northern Mang Sacred Region also noticed. This time, Chu Fengmian came back alone. Usually, Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli were inseparable. However, this time, Chu Fengmian came back alone. It doesn't matter. Whoever comes back is seeking his own death this time. This person dares to come back. It seems that he has almost forgotten what happened before. A warrior with a ferocious face said. It was Meng Li. Saint Master is the genius of the Yi family. This person probably doesn't know who is the real powerful figure in Northern Mang Sacred Region. He dares to come back after offending the Yi family. This person is really tired of living. He's just a brat. He's really arrogant just because he got some opportunities. Unfortunately, in the eyes of the Yi clan, he's just like an ant. They can crush him with a finger. Just you wait, he's not far from death. Then, with a flicker of his body, he left the place. Chu Fengmian's return was known to everyone in the northern region's sacred region within a day. Chu Fengmian participated in the martial arts competition, won the first place on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region, killed Yi Tianjun, and obtained a great opportunity in the returning ruined sky. All of this made Chu Fengmian high-spirited. However, many warriors sneered when they looked at Sword Comprehension Peak. Chu Fengmian had offended the Yi family. Although Xianbei Saint had protected him last time, Xianbei Saint could not protect Chu Fengmian forever. This time, the Yi family must kill Chu Fengmian directly. Many Northern Mang's Sacred Region disciples were already looking at Sword Comprehension Peak, their eyes filled with greed. As long as Chu Fengmian died, Sword Comprehension Peak would become ownerless. At that time, anyone could fight for it. Master is not in Northern Mang Sacred Region. Chu Fengmian returned to Sword Comprehension Peak and scanned the entire Northern Mang Sacred Region with his spiritual senses. However, he did not sense Xianbei Saint's aura. This made Chu Fengmian frown. Chapter 809. Chu Fengmian's current strength was no longer the same as before. He had already stepped into the life and death realm. Compared to when Chu Fengmian left the North Mang Academy, he was many times stronger. His current spiritual consciousness was enough to see most of the North Mang Sacred Region. However, Chu Fengmian did not sense Xianbei Saint's aura. It seemed like Xianbei Saint had left the North Mang Sacred Region for some unknown reason. Chu Fengmian could vaguely sense Xianbei Saint's strength. Xianbei Saint had most likely stepped into the fifth step of the life and death steps, the divine object realm. Once a martial artist stepped into the divine object realm, his strength would undergo an earth-shattering change. Even in the 7 great sects, divine object realm martial artists could be considered as old antiques. They usually cultivated in the sacred grounds, wanting to break through to a higher level. It was rare for someone to appear outside or even leave. Especially when Xianbei Saint left, he did not leave any message, indicating that everything was abnormal. No matter what, it won't be easy for the Yi clan to deal with me. With my current strength, even if I meet Yi Mu, I won't be afraid. Chu Fengmian thought inwardly. He now possessed 400 strands of supreme sword qi, and his cultivation base had already reached the 8th level of life and death realm. On top of that, he had mastered the 9-region sword art. With such strength, even if he met Yi Mu from the Yi clan, he wouldn't be able to do anything. Chu Fengmian was confident that he could kill Yi Mu. Chu Fengmian's strength was not inferior to some of the North Mang Academy's old antiques. If the North Mang Academy wanted to deal with him, they would have to pay a huge price. Moreover, Chu Fengmian had his own escape route, as long as he had Cloud Feather Palace as his last escape route. Even if Chu Fengmian was no match for Cloud Feather Palace, he could escape unscathed. Because of this, Chu Fengmian could return to the North Mang Academy without any fear. As he thought of this, Chu Fengmian wasn't too worried. He sat on the ground and took out the 3 tempered gold bamboos from his spatial ring. Quenched gold bamboo was difficult to find in the 9 regions. Generally speaking, it would only grow in places with rich metal qi. So he was able to obtain the quenched gold bamboo because there was a lot of metal qi in his family Su's old house, which allowed the quenched gold bamboo to grow. These 3 quenching golden bamboos each had more than a dozen bamboo joints. Generally speaking, quenching golden bamboos were used to quench spiritual weapons. Just 1 bamboo joint was enough. These 3 quenching golden bamboos were enough to quench dozens of spiritual weapons. As long as it was a spirit weapon that had been tempered by gold-quenching bamboo, it would be able to be reborn and its power would increase by more than double. In Chu Fengmian's era, it was an item that countless people fought over. Quenched divine weapon. Quenched divine weapon was an immortal weapon. Quenched weapon was. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's War Dragon Treasure Chariot, Ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword, and Cloud Feather Palace could not be refined using the quenched gold bamboo's power. These 3 spirit weapons were the best among the heaven-grade spirit weapons. The quenched gold bamboo's power could not affect them. However, this did not mean that these 3 quenching golden bamboos were useless. Among the numerous spiritual weapons that Chu Fengmian possessed, one of them was the most suitable for quenching. It was the black mysterious sword array that he had personally refined. The mysterious black sword formation was refined by Chu Fengmian less than a year ago. The power in it had not been completely finalized. At this time, using the quenched gold bamboo to refine it was the best choice. Once the mysterious black sword formation was refined again by the quenched gold bamboo, the power of the mysterious black sword formation would skyrocket. Mysterious black sword formation. Come out! Chu Fengmian shouted. The mysterious black sword formation flew out from Chu Fengmian's body. 100,000 spiritual swords hovered in the air. Chu Fengmian waved his hand, and the 3 quenched gold bamboo flew into the air. In the mysterious black sword formation, all of them shattered and turned into golden particles. All of them were integrated into the 100,000 spiritual swords. If Chu Fengmian deliberately chose the more powerful spiritual swords in the mysterious black sword formation to refine, these 3 quenched gold bamboo would be enough to create dozens of heaven-grade spirit weapons. However, compared to the 100,000 spiritual swords in the mysterious black sword formation, the power produced by dozens of heaven-grade spirit weapons was just a drop in the bucket. The most powerful part of the mysterious black sword formation was the 100,000 spiritual swords. Once they were released, countless warriors would not be able to break through the layers. Therefore, Chu Fengmian chose to integrate the 3 quenched gold bamboo into the mysterious black sword formation. Although it could not transform the mysterious black sword formation, it was enough to increase the overall power of the mysterious black sword formation by countless times. This mysterious black sword formation is one of the trump cards that I rely on the most. The current power of the mysterious black sword formation is enough to trap several life-shattering realm warriors at the same time. Chu Fengmian felt that the power of the mysterious black sword formation was getting stronger and stronger, and he was extremely happy in his heart. Chu Fengmian had many fortuitous encounters. It could even be said that among the younger generation of disciples, there is absolutely no one who could compare with him in terms of fortuitous encounters. However, although Chu Fengmian had many fortuitous encounters, he did not dare to casually reveal most of them. For example, Ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword, Battle Dragon Treasure Carriage, etc., Chu Fengmian could still use them. However, the Supreme Sword Chi, Emperor Jar, and even Chu Fengmian's Fortune Power, Natal Sword Origin, Cloud Feather Palace, etc., could not be exposed. Once exposed, any one of them would bring great danger to Chu Fengmian. Therefore, Chu Fengmian could not easily use them. The mysterious black sword formation could be regarded as one of the trump cards that Chu Fengmian could openly use. Therefore, Chu Fengmian urgently needed the mysterious black sword formation to transform. After all, the opponents that Chu Fengmian had to face now were not those life and death realm warriors, but many old antiques who had stepped onto the life and death steps. The stronger the mysterious black sword formation was, the more it would help Chu Fengmian. The power of the tempering gold bamboo was completely integrated into the mysterious black sword formation, gradually transforming the 100,000 spiritual swords within the mysterious black sword formation. At this moment, in a unique space within Northern Mang's sacred region, countless figures were traversing through it. Each and every one of these figures was definitely an old-timer. Even the weakest of them had the strength of a life-saving demolisher. Everyone had transcended life and death and stepped onto the life and death steps. This was the true core of Northern Mang Academy, Northern Mang Palace. Chapter 810. Northern Mang Palace. In the Northern Mang Academy, there were only a few disciples who knew about the existence of Northern Mang Palace. In the Northern Mang Academy, only those whose strength had surpassed life and death and stepped onto the life and death steps were qualified to set foot in this place. The figures that appeared in Northern Mang Palace were all old antiques with extremely high status in the Northern Mang Academy. They were the true upper echelons of the Northern Mang Academy. The Northern Mang Academy had been passed down for 10,000 years. Although its true foundation could not be compared to the 7 great sects, it had already surpassed most of the sections. There were more than 100 figures in Northern Mang Palace. In the entire Northern Mang Academy, there were more than 100 people who had surpassed life and death. Among them, there were a few old men sitting at the top of Northern Mang Palace. The aura of each of them was extremely terrifying. These old antiques were people who had lived for an unknown number of years. They sat motionlessly in the void, but the aura emitted from their bodies was enough to shock others. There were many figures below, and a few of them were familiar to Chu Fengmian. Yimu of the Yi clan was also sitting below. The vice principal of the Northern Mang Academy and Yi Zongxing of the Yi clan were also seated below. However, this person's status was extremely high. The other figures beside him could not help but lower their heads to show their respect. Chu Fengmian came out of the returning ruins sky alive. According to the information, this person wantonly killed in the returning ruined sky and obtained countless treasures. Even the inheritance of the Colossus Cloud Feather Palace from 70,000 years ago was obtained by this person. It has been a long time since such a person has appeared among the disciples of our Northern Mang Academy. The inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace is an incomparably huge treasure. If our Northern Mang Academy wants to rise, we must obtain the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace. One of the figures said coldly. This figure was one of the old ancestors of the Northern Mang Academy, Old Ancestor Do Huang. He was an old ancestor who frequently appeared in the Northern Mang Sanctuary and was in charge of the various information of the Northern Mang Academy. The various news that Chu Fengmian had encountered in the end-ruined sky could be hidden from others, but it was very difficult to hide from a colossus like the Northern Mang Academy. After all, the intelligence network of any powerful organization was more terrifying than one could imagine. Bombing Academy wasn't the only one to know about this. News of Chu Fengmian obtaining Cloud Feather Palace's inheritance from Bottomless Ruined Sky had reached the 7 great sects as well. Even sects like Black Heaven Sect had received the news. Just as old ancestor Do Huang's words faded, another figure stood up and spoke with a sharp tone. According to the news, the kid went on a killing spree in the Sinkhole Heaven. Almost all of the disciples of the 7 great sects were killed by him. Even the disciples of the Black Heaven Sect and the Blazing Sun School were killed. This person is simply crazy to the extreme and has brought great trouble to our Northern Mang Academy. Why don't we capture this child and hand him over to the 7 great sects? This figure was Yi Mu. He had been holding a grudge for not killing Chu Fengmian previously. Now that Chu Fengmian had returned, the first person he wanted to kill was Chu Fengmian. However, Chu Fengmian's actions in Bottomless Ruined Sky had already reached the upper echelons of the academy. Even as a disciple of the Yi clan, he didn't dare to kill Chu Fengmian on his own accord. He could only wait until the academy made a decision before dealing with Chu Fengmian. Yi Mu is right. Our Northern Mang Academy has always kept a low profile and doesn't provoke the 7 great sections. However, this child is too arrogant. He wantonly slaughtered the disciples of the 7 great sects and caused a lot of trouble. If the 7 great sects blame us in the future, it won't be good for our academy. I agree to hand this child over to the 7 great sects, another figure said. It was an ancestor named Tian Nan. He supported Yi Mu as soon as he opened his mouth. If we hand Chu Fengmian over, what will happen to the many opportunities he has obtained and the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace? Great ancestor Deng Ling, one of the vice principals of the Northern Sea Academy, said from another figure seated at the top. Chu Fengmian killed Sword Ancestor Desolation, War God Deer, and Saint Emperor Desolation in the ruins of End Heaven. It's said that Saint Emperor Desolation has already surpassed the life and death realm and reached the life-saving realm. He's no weaker than an ordinary patriarch. Our Northern Mang Academy has never seen such a genius in thousands of years. If we hand him over now, won't we miss a good opportunity to rise? Moreover, this child is Xian Bei's disciple and is considered loyal to our academy. Why don't we compensate the 7 great sects with some wealth to protect this child? Old ancestor Deng Ling, the vice principal of the Northern Mang Academy, voiced a different opinion. Vice Principal Deng Ling, this child is a scourge. He is extremely arrogant. Leaving him in the academy will only bring disaster to us. How can we nurture him? Old ancestor Yi Mu said with a sharp voice. What's more, this kid was just lucky and obtained a few more opportunities. As long as we capture this kid and force him to reveal all his opportunities, then extract his bloodline, it'll be enough to create another genius. At that time, we can hand this kid over to the 7 great sects, and it'll be enough to appease the anger of the 7 great sections. That's right. Although this Chu Fengmian is Xian Bei's disciple, he came out of nowhere. We have never heard of such a disciple before. Moreover, his strength is too strange. His progress is too fast. In just a few months, he broke through from the wind-resisting realm to the life and death realm. This speed is simply unheard of. I suspect that this child is a spy from the 7 great sects. Yi Zongxing, the vice principal of the Yi family, who had been sitting on the top of the palace, suddenly spoke. The 7 great sects have always wanted to annex our Northern Mang Academy. Everyone should know this. However, they have never found the opportunity. This time, this Chu Fengmian is very likely a spy from the 7 great sections. His strength should be suppressed through some special means. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to progress so fast. In any case, we must investigate this child. Even if our academy decides to nurture this child, we must know his background and make him confess everything. Only then can we make a conclusion. Old ancestor Yimu said hurriedly. How about I capture him and bring him to the Northern Mang Palace? Under the watchful eyes of so many people, we'll know who this person is with just a glance. Chapter 811. No matter what, this kid is now an unstable bomb. If he's really a spy of the 7 major sects, then the academy will focus on nurturing this kid. It's very likely that it will cause trouble in the future. We have to guard against this. Yi Zongxing slowly opened his mouth. Right now, we only need to bring this child to this Northern Mang Palace and let him take out all of his fortuitous encounters. If there are no problems, then this child is naturally worthy of our Northern Mang Academy's nurturing. As for the 7 great sects, I can also compensate them. Yi Zongxing spoke with a glib tongue that no one could refute. In the Northern Mang Palace, countless figures were silent. Even Vice Principal Deng Ling, who previously supported Chu Fengmian, did not continue to speak. Indeed, Chu Fengmian's origin was still an extremely vague existence. Especially the various fortuitous encounters that Chu Fengmian had obtained, they were all rare fortuitous encounters in the 9 regions. None of this could be proven, nor could it convince everyone. All right, Deng Ling, you will bring Chu Fengmian here. Go and tell him that as long as he's not a spy of the 7 major sects and has no other intentions towards our Northern Mang Academy, our academy will not make things difficult for him. After a moment of silence, an ancient voice rang out from the depths of the palace. Clearly, it was an old antique of the Northern Mang Academy, a living fossil that spoke. When such a figure spoke, no one below dared to go against his decision. Yes, Deng Ling nodded his head and his body moved, gradually disappearing from the Northern Mang Palace. Seeing Deng Ling's departure, the Yi clan's ancestors revealed a cold smile at the corner of their mouths. On the sword comprehension peak, Chu Fengmian was still cultivating his sword technique with his eyes closed, perfecting his 9 regions sword technique. The fortuitous encounter that Chu Fengmian obtained in the returning ruined sky was simply beyond his imagination. Especially the sword technique recorded in the Cloud Feather Palace. It was the most powerful sword technique of that era. Chu Fengmian carefully comprehended it, which was enough to make his strength take another step forward. During this period of time, every time Chu Fengmian comprehended it, his sword technique would have a new breakthrough, and his strength would also become more powerful. Boom! Suddenly, a wave of spiritual energy fluctuation came from the sword comprehension peak, and a figure suddenly appeared. The moment the figure appeared, Chu Fengmian seemed to have been prepared. As expected, the sword array around the sword comprehension peak suddenly disappeared and turned into a passage. Oh, That figure was Vice Dean Dangling. When he saw the changes in sword comprehension peak, he naturally understood that it was Chu Fengmian's arrangement. With a move of his body, he directly descended on the sword comprehension peak. Vice Headmaster Dangling had just ascended on sword comprehension peak when she sensed a sharp sword aura from every corner of the peak. This sword intent was the sword realm that emanated from Chu Fengmian's body when he was practicing swordsmanship. It gradually permeated every inch of land on sword comprehension peak. It could be said that the sword comprehension peak could be considered a sacred training ground. If countless sword cultivators could train on it, they would be able to comprehend sword techniques. This person's swordsmanship has really reached the peak. Vice Principal Dangling was shocked to see this. Although Beimang Academy did not specialize in swordsmanship, there were still some sword principal experts in the academy. But even those old ancestors who had already transcended life and death did not have any swordsmanship that could be compared to Chu Fengmian. Vice Principal Dangling had long heard of Chu Fengmian's outstanding swordsmanship, but now she truly understood what kind of realm Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship had reached. If this kid is really used by our Beimang Academy would not have to worry about prosperity. Unfortunately, the Yi clan is actually coming to deal with him. Vice Principal Dangling looked at Chu Fengmian and could not help but sigh. The Yi clan would definitely not let Chu Fengmian go. Chu Fengmian had killed the supreme genius of the Yi clan, Yi Tianjun. Even if it was him, it was impossible to protect Chu Fengmian. Which old ancestor has descended on my sword comprehension peak? Just when Vice Principal Dangling descended, Chu Fengmian's voice suddenly came from the cave of sword comprehension peak. Then, Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly crossed the space and appeared on the sword comprehension peak. I am Dangling, the Vice Principal of Beimang Academy. Vice Principal Dangling loudly shouted. This time, I'm here on the order of the Academy to bring you to the Beimang Palace. So it's Vice Principal Dangling. Chu Fengmian looked at Vice Principal Dangling and said with a calm face, "Then let's go." Chu Fengmian already knew that since he had returned to the Beimang Academy, there would naturally be a day like this. After all, Chu Fengmian did not believe that the Yi clan would let him go so easily, especially Yi Mu, who hated Chu Fengmian to the bone. Now, Vice Principal Dangling's arrival did not surprise Chu Fengmian. Oh, looking at Chu Fengmian's calm expression, Vice Principal Dangling could not help but be shocked. Chu Fengmian's attitude was so calm. Chu Fengmian definitely knew that the Yi clan would not let go of this opportunity to deal with Chu Fengmian. The more it was like this, the more Vice Principal Dangling looked at Chu Fengmian calmly. Chu Fengmian, I'm acquainted with your master, the Xianbei Saint. This time, the Academy's higher-ups wanted you to go to the Beimang Palace. In fact, it was the Yi clan's idea. They said that you're a spy of the Beimang Academy and wanted you to prove your innocence. Since you're Xianbei's disciple, I naturally believe you. However, you have to be careful. The Yi clan's people can cover the sky with one hand among the higher-ups of the Beimang Academy. One of the founders of the Beimang Academy is a member of the Yi clan. Therefore, you have to be cautious and humble. You can't let the Yi clan find a reason to deal with you. It's fine to be a little humble, but you can't be impulsive and lose your life. Vice Principal Dangling warned. He was also unwilling to see Chu Fengmian die in the hands of the Yi clan, so he specially came to warn him. Many thanks. Chu Fengmian heard everything and nodded his head. His gaze was incomparably cold. Yi clan. Although he knew that the Yi clan would definitely choose to deal with Chu Fengmian, he did not expect that they would use such an excuse. Spy. With this excuse, the Yi clan could endlessly probe Chu Fengmian's trump card. Chu Fengmian's various fortuitous encounters must be revealed. All of his trump cards will be meaningless. However, if he did not reveal it, the fact that he was a spy would be enough to kill Chu Fengmian. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.